Chapter 444. They had already lost 2 matches in a row. As the third disciple of the Qingyang sect stepped onto the stage, Chao He consciously stood up and turned to look at Gu Lingyao and Xiao Qin as she spoke. "Junior sister, junior brother, let me fight this match." Xiao Qin didn't say anything after hearing Chao He's words, while Gu Lingyao nodded. "We'll leave everything to you, senior brother Chao He." The first 2 matches could be said to have been forfeited by the celestial equal sect. The last 3 matches would be the real deciding battle. As Chao He stepped onto the stage, the talisman formation was activated again. The two stood facing each other. Both Chao He and the Qingyang sect disciple were very familiar with each other. They had fought many times before and both had won and lost. The Qingyang sect disciple calmly looked at Chao He. He also knew that the real battle would only begin from here. Therefore, the disciple smiled and said, "Chao He, if we lose this battle, the 2 sects' grand gathering will be over." "Unfortunately, I won't lose this match," Chao He replied indifferently after hearing the Qingyang sect disciple's words. His words were full of confidence, unaffected by the loss of the first 2 matches. After all, he had already prepared for this. Everything would depend on the last 3 matches. As she spoke, Chao He chose to attack first. She used her full strength right from the start. A black tiger's silhouette appeared behind her. Tiger rush. He didn't hold back at all. Seeing the black tiger's shadow behind Chao He, many of the nobles of the Heavenly Wolf Empire were stunned. It couldn't be helped. The reputation of the Stampede Tiger was too great. As the treasure of the Celestial Equal Sect, the Stampede Tiger could be said to be one of the strongest martial skills in the entire Danyang County. Only the legendary Saint's skill could suppress it. Unfortunately, there was no Saint's skill in the entire Danyang County. Seeing that Chao He had used the Tiger Stampede, the Qingyang sect disciple who was fighting against her had a solemn look in his eyes. Without hesitation, he also used the Qingyang sect's sect-guarding martial skill. There was a blazing sun condensing behind him. The Tianqi sect had the running tiger, so the Qingyang sect naturally had their own sect-guarding martial technique, which was the Qingyang battle form. This was not some special physique. The Azure Sun battle armor was a heaven-tier upper-rank martial skill. Once it was used, a scorching sun image would appear. With the assistance of this scorching sun image, the attacking power of the user would be greatly increased. Furthermore, this Azure Sun battle armor also had the effect of increasing one's defensive capabilities. The ferocious tiger stampede against the Azure Sun battle armor. Seeing Chao He and the others on the stage display the sect-guarding martial skills of the 2 great sects one after another, the crowd's interest was piqued. Without a doubt, whether it was the ferocious tiger gallop or the Azure Sun battle armor, they were the 2 strongest martial skills in Danyang County. Although there were also heaven-class martial skills in the 3 great empires, the highest grade was only heaven-class middle class, and had not reached heaven-class high class. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Chao He took the lead and took a step forward. In an instant, Chao He seemed to have turned into a ferocious tiger descending the mountain as she charged straight at her opponent. The ferocious tiger gallop was particular about momentum. After using the ferocious tiger gallop, every move was like a ferocious tiger out of its cage. It was unstoppable. Before she arrived, a terrifying aura had already rushed over. Feeling the terrifying aura emitted from Chao He's body, the Qingyang sect disciple who was fighting against her fiercely punched out. The scorching sun image behind him emitted a dazzling light. The terrifying power of the punch seemed to distort the space around it. The Azure Sun battle armor was an orthodox attack martial technique, while the ferocious tiger gallop was a movement martial technique. In terms of attack power, the ferocious tiger gallop was naturally no match for the Azure Sun battle armor. Therefore, facing the attack of the Qingyang sect disciple, Chao He cleverly chose not to meet it head-on. Instead, she relied on the speed of the ferocious tiger gallop to skillfully dodge the attack. After dodging the attack, Chao He directly circled behind the disciple with the speed of the ferocious tiger gallop. She fiercely punched out and hit the disciple in the middle of his back. After taking Chao He's punch head-on, the Qingyang sect disciple immediately spat out a mouthful of blood and his face turned pale. However, his reaction was not slow. After taking Chao He's blow head-on, the disciple quickly counterattacked. He stretched out his right hand and grabbed Chao He's wrist. With a fierce pull, he punched out like a dragon and also hit Chao He's abdomen with a punch. As soon as she made her move, she displayed her absolute combat strength. It was completely different from the one-sided suppression from before. The combat strength that Chao He displayed in this battle could not be underestimated. The battle was extremely fierce. Figures crisscrossed the arena. Both of them did not hold back at all. In the face of such a fierce battle, the nobles of the Heavenly Wolf Empire below were all watching intently. The strength of the two was almost the same, so it was very difficult to determine the winner. After more than 2 hours, the two had already lost count of how many moves they had exchanged. Such a long and high-intensity confrontation could be said to be a huge consumption for both Chao He and the Qingyang sect disciple. At this moment, both of them had different degrees of injuries on their bodies. At the same time, the spiritual energy in their bodies was almost exhausted. Their faces were much paler than before. It's almost time to determine the winner. Sitting below the arena, Shao Chun had been paying attention to the Blood Wolf King most of the time. At this moment, he turned his head and glanced at Chao He in the arena. Then, Shao Chun said indifferently, "Many people could see that it was time for the winner to be determined. After fighting for so long, both of them could be said to be exhausted. In the end, it would depend on who could last longer." Their speed was much slower than before. At the same time, the ferocious tiger stampede and the Qingyang battle armor had long disappeared. The spiritual energy in their bodies could no longer support the use of heaven-level upper-rank martial skills. Both of them clenched their fists. The battle had changed from a frightening momentum to a close combat. The two of them exchanged punches. It could be said that every punch hit the flesh. At this point in the battle, both of them could be said to be holding on with their willpower. Muffled bangs rang out. In the end, everyone saw Chao He's fist landing on the Qingyang sect disciple's face. Then, the disciple only felt his vision turn black and he lost consciousness. He fell to the ground with a loud bang. Seeing this scene, everyone present could not help but let out a long sigh of relief. The winner was finally decided. With the Qingyang sect disciple falling to the ground unconscious, the Tianqi sect finally recovered a point. After the consecutive losses at the beginning, the Tianqi sect finally won the first victory of this two-sect tournament. 2 Tianqi sect disciples went on stage to help Chao He down. Although she won, Chao He's injuries were quite serious. After swallowing a healing elixir, Chao He's complexion looked better. Chapter 445. Hua Ze, who was in the Qingyang sect's camp, seemed to have already guessed that he would lose this battle. With a smile still on his face, Hua Ze said lightly, "Go ahead." It was already the 4th battle and Hua Ze sent out a disciple whose strength was only inferior to his own. Hearing Hua Ze's words, the disciple smiled coldly and strode into the arena. His eyes fell directly on Shao Chun. Although he wasn't very familiar with the situation in the Celestial Equal sect, he knew a little about it. Gu Lingyao was publicly recognized as the strongest person among the younger generation of the Celestial Equal sect. Therefore, this disciple clearly didn't think that Gu Lingyao would go on stage at this time. Because Gu Lingyao's opponent was Hua Ze, this disciple directly locked his gaze on Shao Chun. Facing the gaze of the Qingyang sect disciple, Shao Chun shook his head helplessly. He was about to get up but was stopped by Gu Lingyao. With a sly smile on his face, Gu Lingyao said softly, "You want to slack off? That won't do. I'm no match for Hua Ze, so I can only leave him to you. Let me fight this battle." He knew that he was no match for Hua Ze, so he could only throw this big trouble to Shao Chun. Hearing Gu Lingyao's words, Xiao Chen smiled helplessly. Originally, it would not be too difficult for him to deal with the Qingyang sect disciple in the arena. However, Gu Lingyao was one step ahead of him and threw Hua Zei's troublesome task to him. Compared to Hua Zei, this Qingyang sect disciple was undoubtedly much easier to deal with. However, Gu Lingyao did not give Xiao Chen the right to choose at all. As soon as he finished speaking, Gu Lingyao stepped into the arena and the talisman formation was activated again. He did not expect Gu Lingyao to fight. Seeing Gu Lingyao step into the arena, not only was the Qingyang sect disciple stunned, but Hua Zei also narrowed his eyes slightly. He was no stranger to Gu Lingyao and knew that Gu Lingyao's strength was indeed unrivaled among the younger generation of the Tianqi sect. As the strongest person, Gu Lingyao should be the last one to fight. Could it be that? While guessing in his heart, Hua Zei could not help but look at Xiao Chen. There was only one possibility for Gu Lingyao to fight first, and that was that Xiao Chen was stronger than Gu Lingyao. But was that possible? Hua Zei had personally experienced Gu Lingyao's strength. To be honest, although Hua Zei had always been able to suppress Gu Lingyao, he was also very wary of Gu Lingyao's trump card. The development of the situation was a little strange, especially when Xiao Chen suddenly appeared. Could he really be stronger than Gu Lingyao? He did not believe it. But no matter what, things could not be changed now. Since Gu Lingyao had stepped into the arena, Hua Zei knew that the result of this battle was already decided. The Qingyang sect disciple was definitely not Gu Lingyao's opponent. In the arena, the Qingyang sect disciple looked at Gu Lingyao with some fear and said in a low voice, "I didn't expect you to fight. I always thought that your opponent would only be senior brother Hua Zei. I'm not Hua Zei's opponent, so naturally, I can only let someone capable deal with him." Hearing the disciple's words, Gu Lingyao smiled slightly. These words also proved that Xiao Chen's strength was indeed stronger than Gu Lingyao's, and Gu Lingyao had already acknowledged this point. For a moment, the Qingyang sect disciple unconsciously looked at Xiao Chen below the arena. Xiao Chen felt like crying under the gaze of this disciple, but he had no tears to shed. To be honest, if he had to choose, Xiao Chen would never want to fight against Hua Zei, because this guy was really a tough nut to crack. Compared to Hua Zei, Xiao Chen preferred to fight against someone else. In this way, he could attract enough attention and not spend too much effort. It was the best of both worlds. However, he had no choice now. This was already the fourth battle. If Gu Lingyao won, then he could only fight against Hua Zei. As for losing, it was simply impossible. Gu Lingyao would not lose. Xiao Chen was very confident about this. He felt like he was being used as a tool by someone else. For some reason, he had to fight with his life on the line. It would be impossible for him to win against Hua Zei easily. It was obvious that a bloody battle was unavoidable. Just as Xiao Chen was secretly depressed, the battle in the arena began. Although he was surprised that Gu Lingyao would come on stage, since this was the case, he could only fight. As soon as he made his move, the Qingyang sect disciple immediately displayed the Qingyang battle form. Seeing this, Gu Lingyao smiled and said, "It's a pity that you've only cultivated the Qingyang battle form to the initial realm." This disciple's Qingyang battle form was only at the initial realm. As soon as Gu Lingyao finished speaking, a black tiger shadow slowly emerged behind him. Compared to Chao He's ferocious tiger's stampede, Gu Lingyao's black tiger was clearly more concentrated. From this, it could be seen that Gu Lingyao's mastery of the ferocious tiger's stampede was much stronger than Chao He's. This was indeed the case. Chao He's stampede tiger was only at the initial realm, but Gu Lingyao's stampede tiger had already reached the proficient realm. Both of them displayed their heaven-level upper martial skills. Immediately, Gu Lingyao took the initiative to attack. Gu Lingyao already had the upper hand just by relying on his comprehension of the heaven-level upper martial skills. Therefore, as the battle erupted, Gu Lingyao directly took the initiative. Figures crisscrossed in the arena. Facing Gu Lingyao, the Qingyang sect disciple struggled to hold on. However, after hundreds of moves, the result did not change. This disciple was cleanly defeated by Gu Lingyao. After successfully winning, Gu Lingyao walked down the arena and came to Xiao Chen's side. He said with a smile, "Now it's 2-2. Senior brother Wang Huan, the final battle is all up to you." This kind of battle was not considered too difficult for Gu Lingyao. However, upon hearing this, Xiao Chen rolled his eyes at her in annoyance. This little girl had picked up a soft persimmon to bully, but she had thrown the toughest bone to him. If he had been the one to fight the previous battle, he could have also won smoothly. Thus, why did he have to fight to the death with Hua Zhe? It was not that Xiao Chen was afraid of Hua Zhe, but it was unnecessary. However, there was no other way. There was only one battle left, and he had no other choice. Sighing helplessly, Xiao Chen leaped into the arena. At the same time, in the Qingyang sect camp, Hua Zhe also stepped out and instantly appeared in the arena. This was the final battle of this year's two-sect grand competition. The score was now 2-2, so the outcome of this battle would directly determine the final result of this year's two-sect grand competition. Chapter 446. In the arena, Xiao Chen and Hua Zhe stood facing each other. Hua Zhe looked at Xiao Chen and said indifferently, "I never thought that you would be the one to fight me in the end. I never thought that my previous joke would actually become a reality." Hua Zhe had previously said to Xiao Chen that he hoped to fight him in the arena. Originally, Hua Zhe had thought that this was just a joke. After all, Hua Zhe's opponent had always been Gu Lingyao. However, who would have thought that this joke would actually become a reality? Xiao Chen would actually meet him in the arena. Hearing Hua Zhe's words, Xiao Chen could only reveal a helpless smile and said, "I also didn't want to, but I had no choice. Junior Gu insisted that I take on a tough nut like you." "Haha, then do you think that you can take me down?" Xiao Chen said that he was a tough nut. Hua Zhe was not angry at this. Instead, he laughed loudly. His laughter was filled with confidence. At the same time, it hid a trace of coldness that was difficult to detect. Facing Hua Zhe's laughter, Xiao Chen said indifferently, "Although it's a little troublesome, if I am determined to take you down, I can still take you down." Hua Zhe had never taken Xiao Chen seriously. However, at this very moment, Xiao Chen said that he could take on a tough nut like him. In other words, Xiao Chen was confident that he could defeat Hua Zhe. A trace of coldness finally flashed in Hua Zhe's eyes. A person that he had never taken a proper look at actually dared to say that he could defeat him. A trace of coldness emerged in his heart. Hua Zhe stared at Xiao Chen and said word by word, "Good, very good. Then let me see how you will take on a tough nut like me." After speaking, Hua Zhe took the initiative to attack. He directly threw a punch. Seeing this, Xiao Chen had no intention of dodging and also threw a punch. Without using any martial techniques, the two fists collided fiercely. With a muffled bang, Hua Zhe and Xiao Chen both retreated several steps. In this first clash, the two of them were actually evenly matched. Hua Zhe's eyes flashed with a complicated look. Although it was just a test, Hua Zhe had to admit that Xiao Chen's strength had indeed shocked him. With such strength, why didn't he know that there was such a person in the celestial equal sect? It was no wonder that Hua Zhe did not know Xiao Chen. Although Xiao Chen's current identity was Wang Huan, the grandson of the great elder of the Tianqi sect, to Hua Zhe, the person who could catch his eye was at least a proud king. Wang Huan was just a playboy previously. Even though he was the grandson of the great elder, he was not worthy of Hua Zhe's attention. Therefore, Hua Zhe naturally did not have any influence on Wang Huan. "Good, very good. Your strength has indeed exceeded my expectations, but that's it. It won't change anything." With a clear shout, a blazing sun slowly appeared behind Hua Zhe. The blazing sun was extremely sudden. Obviously, Hua Zei's cultivation of the Azure Sun battle form had reached the proficient realm like Gu Lingyao. He was even stronger than Gu Lingyao and was only a step away from breaking through to the perfect realm. Heaven-level upper-grade martial techniques were extremely difficult to cultivate. However, with every improvement, the power of the heaven-level upper-grade martial technique would increase substantially. He directly displayed the Azure Sun battle form. Seeing this, Chao He, who was below the stage, said with a worried expression, "Junior Sister Gu, can junior brother Wang Huan block it?" Hua Zei is known as the #1 person in Danyang County. I don't know. However, if even he can't block it, then no one in the Tianqi sect can. After hearing Chao He's words, Gu Lingyao also felt uncertain. She wasn't sure if Shao Chen could block Hua Zei, but Gu Lingyao knew very well that if even Shao Chen couldn't block it, then the Tianqi sect wouldn't blame them for losing. This was because if she were in Hua Zei's shoes, she wouldn't be a match either. Gu Lingyao had confirmed this many times. Shao Chen was very strong. This was what Gu Lingyao's innate intuition told her. However, as for how strong he was, Gu Lingyao didn't know. After all, she had never fought with Shao Chen. However, no matter what, if she wanted to defeat Hua Zei, she could only rely on Shao Chen. Hua Zei's aura was also raised to the extreme when he displayed the Qingyang battle armor. His every movement carried a terrifying might. Compared to the previous 4 Qingyang sect disciples, Hua Zei's strength was indeed much stronger. There was still a faint smile on his face, but a cold light flickered in his eyes. The storage ring in his hand flashed, and a long blade appeared in his hand. Without hesitation, Hua Zei slashed out and a terrifying blade light attacked Shao Chen like lightning. Facing Hua Zei's blade, Shao Chen naturally wouldn't be careless. He already knew that this was going to be a tough battle. Hua Zei's strength was even above Tianfeng Xingzong's Yang Heng. After all, Yang Heng wasn't good at fighting. Shao Chen took out the scarlet edge sword and raised the Jian-yi. A sword light fiercely rushed out and fiercely collided with Hua Zei's blade light. However, because Hua Zei displayed the Qingyang battle armor, his attack power was greatly enhanced. Therefore, Shao Chen was clearly at a disadvantage in this head-on collision. Although he didn't suffer any substantial damage, Shao Chen still retreated 5 steps before he could stop himself. Although he was at a disadvantage in one blow, Hua Zei didn't stop and continued to pursue. Seeing this, Shao Chen didn't hesitate and directly displayed the ferocious tiger's stampede. Gu Qi and Gu Lingyao, who were on the high platform and below the arena, immediately changed their expressions when they saw the black tiger shadow slowly condensing behind Shao Chen. The ferocious tiger's stampede was personally taught to Shao Chen by Gu Qi half a month ago. It had only been half a month since then, but Shao Chen had already mastered it? Although it seemed that Shao Chen had only just mastered it and was only at the initial level, it was already terrifying enough. One must know that in the history of the Celestial Equal Sect, there had never been anyone who could cultivate the ferocious tiger's stampede to the initial level in half a month. Originally, Gu Qi had already reminded Shao Chen not to rush to learn the ferocious tiger's stampede. The reason why he said that was because Gu Qi knew that it was impossible for Shao Chen to learn the ferocious tiger's stampede in just half a month. However, reality gave Gu Qi a fierce slap in the face. In just half a month, Shao Chen actually managed to learn the ferocious tiger's stampede. Both father and daughter were stunned on the spot. Sensing Gu Lingyao's abnormality, Chao He shouted from the side, Junior Sister Gu, what's wrong with you? Are you all right?" Gu Lingyao couldn't help but fall into a daze. It wasn't until Chao He's shout that she regained her senses. Her face was still full of shock, but Gu Lingyao still shook her head and said, It's nothing. Although they didn't tell anyone else about this, Shao Chen's performance set off a storm in the hearts of Gu Qi and Gu Lingyao. At the same time, an inexplicable light flashed in Gu Qi's eyes. He originally had a thought in his heart, but now it was confirmed by Gu Qi. He really didn't misjudge Xiao Chen. Chapter 447. In just half a month, Gu Qi and his daughter were astonished to see that he had cultivated the ferocious tiger Stampede to the elementary level. Furthermore, it was not just a matter of fast cultivation speed. The stampede of the ferocious tiger that Xiao Chen conjured, compared to Chao He and the others, actually had an additional sense of pressure, as if a ferocious tiger had descended upon the world. Tiger Rush, haha, but you've only reached the initial stage of Tiger Rush. You're too weak. Hua Zei laughed coldly when he saw that Xiao Chen's Tiger Rush was only at the initial stage of Tiger Rush. Tiger Rush and Green Sun Battle Form were known as the two strongest martial skills in Danyang County. They couldn't be underestimated. However, Xiao Chen's Tiger Rush was only at the initial stage of Tiger Rush, so it wasn't enough to catch Hua Zei's eye. Xiao Chen did not mind Hua Zei's sneer. He naturally knew that the beginner level of the Stampede of the Tiger could not compete with Hua Zei's Qingyang battle form. Xiao Chen had never thought of using the Stampede of the Tiger to deal with Hua Zei. He only used it to increase his speed. Although it was only at the initial stage, Xiao Chen had already surpassed Hua Zei in terms of speed. After all, Tiger Rush was a movement martial skill, while Green Sun Battle Form was an attack martial skill. They focused on different things. With Tiger Rush, Xiao Chen cleverly dodged Hua Zei's attacks. He swung his saber continuously, but none of his attacks hit Xiao Chen. Seeing that Xiao Chen was like a loach that could not be controlled, the coldness in Hua Zei's eyes became more and more intense. He was no stranger to the Stampede of the Tiger, and naturally, he also knew how terrifying the increase in speed would be after using it. Humph, let's see how long you can dodge. Hua Zei snorted coldly and continued to attack. Although it was difficult for Hua Zei to hit Xiao Chen with the help of the Stampede of the Tiger, Hua Zei's attack power was enough to seriously injure Xiao Chen once. Hua Zei's attacks became fiercer and fiercer. Facing Hua Zei's tide-like attacks, Xiao Chen was actually under a lot of pressure. He thought helplessly as he dodged. Sigh, I knew it would be a tough job to fight against this guy. She wanted to fight Hua Zei to the death for no reason, and all of this was caused by Gu Lingyao. She was really a mischievous girl. She cursed Gu Lingyao in her heart. However, Gu Lingyao, who was sitting below the arena, was watching the battle anxiously. Although he had successfully forced Xiao Chen to fight Hua Zei, Gu Lingyao wasn't confident about the outcome of this battle. At the same time, he couldn't guarantee that Xiao Chen would be able to defeat Hua Zei. The battle continued. From everyone's point of view, Xiao Chen was clearly at a disadvantage. Facing Hua Zei's fierce attacks, Xiao Chen could only keep dodging. If this continued, it would not be a long-term solution. One had to know that if he kept defending, he would definitely lose. No matter how strong a person's defense was, if he kept choosing to let go, there would definitely be a day when he would lose his defense. Therefore, one couldn't just defend blindly. While defending and dodging, one also had to look for opportunities to counterattack. Many people thought that Xiao Chen wasn't Hua Zei's opponent. However, just as everyone was thinking this, Xiao Chen suddenly launched a counterattack. Sword intent gushed out as Xiao Chen fiercely slashed out with his sword. He directly used the three-layered waves, 10,000 waves. In the face of Xiao Chen's sudden counterattack, Hua Zei, who was in the middle of a battle, suddenly froze. However, he didn't panic. He fiercely slashed out with his broadsword, and a blood-red blade light fiercely rushed towards Xiao Chen. The two attacks fiercely collided, and a terrifying aftershock instantly enveloped the entire arena. At the same time, the dazzling light made it difficult for people to look directly at it. After successfully blocking Xiao Chen's counterattack, Hua Zei couldn't help but sneer. How naive! Xiao Chen wanted to use such an attack to hurt him. However, what Hua Zei didn't expect was that just as he finished speaking, Xiao Chen fiercely rushed out of the light and instantly appeared in front of Hua Zei. The two immediately broke out into a hand-to-hand fight. He didn't expect Xiao Chen to rush towards him directly. However, Hua Zei wasn't afraid of hand-to-hand combat. His blade technique wasn't just for show. The blade and the sword constantly collided, and the sound of metal colliding constantly rang out. Seeing that Xiao Chen actually dared to fight Hua Zei in hand-to-hand combat, the people below the arena all had strange expressions on their faces. The disciples of the Qingyang sect watched the battle in the arena and sneered. He's courting death. How dare he fight senior brother Hua Zei in hand-to-hand combat? That's right. Let's not talk about their blade and sword technique. Senior brother Hua Zei, who is using the Qingyang battle form, is far superior to that kid in terms of strength and attack power. He's simply courting death in hand-to-hand combat. The Qingyang sect's disciple Xiao Chen's choice was courting death. Indeed, with the addition of the Qingyang battle form, Hua Zei's strength and attack power surpassed Xiao Chen's. There was no doubt about this. After all, the power of a heaven-level upper martial skill was no joke. Compared to Hua Zei, Xiao Chen's only advantage was his speed. The ferocious tiger stampede's speed was far superior to the Qingyang battle form. Xiao Chen was at a disadvantage in terms of strength and attack power, but Xiao Chen had a certain advantage in terms of speed. Looking at the fierce battle between the two, Gu Lingyao's face was filled with worry. Chao he couldn't help but speak up. What is junior brother Wang Huan thinking? How can he get close to Hua Zei? The Qingyang battle form is an offensive martial skill. How can junior brother Wang Huan be Hua Zei's opponent in a hand-to-hand combat? She felt that Xiao Chen's choice was too stupid. Hearing Chao He's words, Gu Lingyao didn't say anything, but her thoughts were the same as Chao He's. She also felt that Xiao Chen's choice was too stupid. The Qingyang battle form's greatest function was to increase a cultivator's attack power. As a result, with Hua Zei using the Qingyang battle form, how could Xiao Chen get close to Hua Zei? Although Xiao Chen had recovered 10% in terms of speed, he was at an absolute disadvantage in other aspects. No one understood why Xiao Chen would take the initiative to get close to Hua Zei. As they fought, a cold smile gradually appeared on Hua Zei's face. He could clearly feel that Xiao Chen's strength was suppressed by his own. As a result, it was only a matter of time before Xiao Chen was defeated. Haha, I have to say that you are simply too stupid. If you had kept dodging, I might not have been able to do anything to you. However, you actually dared to take the initiative to get close to me. I can only say that you are courting death. Hearing Hua Zei's words, Xiao Chen didn't panic at all. On the contrary, he revealed a confident smile. I know a person who is also a sword cultivator. Compared to him, you are far inferior. Do you know why I dared to take the initiative to get close to you? Although your strength and attack power are above mine, your saber technique is too weak. Compared to the person I know, it's like the difference between heaven and earth. Chapter 448. Xiao Chen did not panic in the slightest when facing Hua Zei, whose strength and attack power surpassed his. This was because after the previous battle, Xiao Chen clearly felt that Hua Zei was inferior to him in terms of sword and saber technique. He said that he knew a saber cultivator, but compared to him, Hua Zei's saber techniques were simply too weak. Needless to say, the person that Xiao Chen was talking about was his elder brother, Chun Ling. It was not an exaggeration at all. Hua Zei's saber techniques were indeed far inferior to Chun Ling's. It was also because of this that Xiao Chen had the confidence to fight with Hua Zei in close combat. After all, close combat was not just a competition of strength. It also had extremely strict requirements for one's understanding of saber and sword technique. As Xiao Chen's voice fell, the long sword in Xiao Chen's hand fiercely swung at an extremely tricky angle. The speed was also ridiculously fast. In an instant, Hua Zei's expression changed. In just the blink of an eye, Xiao Chen's attack had increased by so much. Hua Zei did not dare to hesitate at all. He leaned to the side and narrowly dodged Xiao Chen's sword. However, just as Hua Ze successfully dodged, Xiao Chen's second move came as expected. The scarlet-edged sword fiercely rose from below. This sword made Hua Ze break out in cold sweat. He did not dare to hesitate and immediately retreated. Previously, Hua Ze had the upper hand. Who would have thought that in just the blink of an eye, Xiao Chen would actually force Hua Ze to retreat with two swords? This was not a suppression of strength or attack power. In terms of strength and attack power, Xiao Chen had not changed much compared to before. The only reason he could do this was because Xiao Chen's understanding of sword principles was far superior to Hua Ze's. What mattered in close combat was one's own comprehension. Regardless of whether it was the way of the blade or the way of the sword, there were differences in strength. Take Xiao Chen for example. Although he was not yet 30 years old, his comprehension of the way of the sword was already extremely high. He wielded the long sword in his hand as if it was his own arm. His sword moves seemed to have no pattern, but every move he made was extremely tricky, making it impossible to guard against. Hua Ze had not expected Xiao Chen to change so much and was forced to retreat. Xiao Chen naturally would not let such a good opportunity go to waste. He leaped up and stuck to Hua Ze like a maggot attached to a bone. Seeing that Xiao Chen had gained the upper hand in an instant and the entire battle situation had been reversed in an instant, Gu Qi, who was on the high platform, revealed a faint smile. As a semi-sage expert, his eyesight was naturally shrewd. He couldn't help but praise in his heart, this boy's understanding of sword principles has already reached an extremely profound level. It's rare, really rare. Hua Ze was forced to retreat by Xiao Chen. For the first time, a trace of anger appeared on his face. He wanted to counterattack, but Xiao Chen's sword was like a big net. Hua Ze could not find a point to counterattack at all. Even defending was extremely difficult. There was no chance for him to counterattack at all. This was the suppression of sword principles. The anger in Hua Ze's heart grew stronger. He was also very clear in his heart that if he wanted to break out of this predicament, he could only make up for it with absolute strength under the circumstance that his understanding of saber principles was inferior to Xiao Chen's. Thinking of this, Hua Ze shouted coldly, "You forced me to do this." Along with his voice, the scorching sun behind Hua Ze gradually dissipated. However, Hua Ze's aura did not weaken at all. On the contrary, it became even stronger. Secret technique. Sensing the change in Hua Ze, Xiao Chen murmured softly. He could tell at a glance that Hua Ze had used a secret technique. Xiao Chen's guess was right. Hua Ze had indeed used a secret technique. Under the enhancement of the secret technique, his cultivation base, which was originally at the beginner Dao querying realm, rushed to the lesser Dao querying realm, and then reached the greater Dao querying realm before gradually stopping. Blazing heart. Hua Ze's aura was extremely terrifying at this moment. He then lashed out with his sword, forcing Xiao Chen to back off with sheer force. Xiao Chen was shocked to see that Hua Ze was able to force him back with sheer force. One shouldn't underestimate the increase of 2 minor levels. For King Jiao, every little bit of improvement was a huge boost to one's battle prowess. The current Hua Ze, who had used his secret technique, was definitely on a completely different level compared to before. After forcing Xiao Chen back with a slash, Hua Ze's eyes were overflowing with killing intent. "Since you're courting death, don't blame me." With the secret technique, Hua Ze thought that he could completely crush Xiao Chen. However, just as he finished speaking, Xiao Chen's aura suddenly soared. Facing Hua Ze, who had used a secret technique, Xiao Chen naturally had no other choice but to use the Dragon Transformation secret technique. His aura instantly broke through the beginner Dao querying realm, and only gradually stabilized after reaching the greater Dao querying realm. Originally, when Xiao Chen was in the sky human realm, the dragon transformation could directly raise his cultivation base by a large level. However, after breaking through to the Tao querying realm, as his cultivation base increased, the effect of the dragon transformation was clearly not as strong as before. After all, the higher one's cultivation base, the harder it was to raise it. As such, the effect of the secret technique would also weaken until it completely lost its effect. Seeing that Xiao Chen's cultivation base had also risen from the beginner Tao querying realm to the greater Tao querying realm, the cold smile on Hua Zei's face instantly froze. Secret technique. Xiao Chen had also used a secret technique. Furthermore, the secret technique that Xiao Chen had mastered was not any weaker than the secret technique that Hua Zei had mastered. I'm afraid it's not realistic to think that you can crush me with a secret technique. After using the dragon transformation, Xiao Chen looked at Hua Zei with a cold smile. Hua Zei gritted his teeth. Up until now, he had been defeated repeatedly. Such an encounter made Hua Zei furious. With a furious roar, Hua Zei raised his saber and slashed downwards. A terrifying saber radiance slashed towards Xiao Chen. Facing Hua Zei's attack, Xiao Chen pointed his finger and used the Tai sword finger. The two collided, but neither could do anything to the other. After successfully blocking Hua Zei's attack, Xiao Chen took the initiative to move forward. Then, the two of them engaged in an intense battle once again. Seeing the two of them engaged in an intense battle, everyone present was shocked. Xiao Chen and Hua Zei's true cultivation bases were only at the beginner Tao querying realm. However, after using a secret technique, their cultivation bases had risen all the way to the greater Tao querying realm. Furthermore, from their battle, it was not difficult to determine that their strength was no longer comparable to that of an ordinary greater Tao querying realm ancient martial art practitioner. It was simply unimaginable for a beginner Tao querying realm cultivator to possess the strength of a greater Tao querying realm expert. Even the emperor of the Tian Lang Empire could not help but exclaim in admiration. This is the pinnacle battle of the younger generation in the Danyang region. Hua Zei lives up to his reputation as the #1 person among the younger generation in the Danyang region. As for this kid called Wang Huan, he is also extraordinary. He can be said to have shocked the world with a single brilliant feat. Chapter 449. With the help of the secret technique, Xiao Chen and Hua Zei's strength was no weaker than an ordinary Tao querying realm martial artist at the great perfection. Figures crisscrossed in the arena. Terrifying shockwaves continued to spread in all directions. The sound of swords clashing was endless. They no longer held back. All kinds of martial arts techniques were used. Up until now, both Hua Zei and Xiao Chen had many wounds on their bodies. Chao He's face was filled with disbelief as she watched the intense battle on the arena. This was the final battle of this grand meeting between the two sects, and it was also the battle that would determine the outcome. She stared blankly at the arena as she involuntarily muttered to herself. Junior brother Wang Huan can actually fight with Hua Zei to this extent. Chao He was very clear about who Wang Huan was. However, such a person was actually able to fight evenly with Hua Zei. One should know that Hua Zei was publicly acknowledged as the #1 person among the younger generation in Danyang County. Even Gu Lingyao was suppressed by him. In the face of Chao He's shock, Gu Lingyao, who was standing to the side, had a contemplative look on her face. She had felt that Xiao Chen was very strong before, but to be honest, she did not expect Xiao Chen's strength to be so strong. She had fought with Hua Zei many times and knew how strong Hua Zei was. However, even so, Xiao Chen did not show any signs of defeat. The two of them exchanged blows, and it was obvious that they were evenly matched. It was difficult to determine the winner. They were amazed by the strength that Xiao Chen displayed. Of course, it was not only Gu Lingyao and Chao He. Everyone else present had the same thought. Hua Zei was already famous, so it was normal for him to have such strength. However, Xiao Chen was a completely unknown kid. However, he had the strength to fight against Hua Zei. As time passed, the battle between the two of them became more and more intense. After a long battle, Hua Ze was both shocked and frightened. Facing Xiao Chen's unpredictable swordsmanship, Hua Ze was under a lot of pressure. If he was careless, he could be seriously injured by Xiao Chen's sword. Hua Ze no longer had the slightest bit of contempt. He could not understand when such a person had appeared in the Tianqi sect. He had never heard of him before. Hua Ze had a thorough understanding of Xiao Chen's strength. At the same time, Xiao Chen secretly sighed. Although this Hua Ze wasn't a good person, his strength was indisputable. He was almost on par with Guduwia. Of course, this was before. After coming to the Sky River continent, Guduwia and the others certainly wouldn't stay in the same place. Their strength was obviously growing rapidly, but in any case, this Hua Ze was indeed very strong, there was no doubt about it. They had been fighting fiercely for an entire 2 hours. In such an intense battle, the two of them had even used their secret technique. As a result, their energy consumption was naturally enormous. A trace of impatience gradually grew in his heart. He slashed out fiercely. Seeing this, Xiao Chen raised his sword to block. Hua Ze wanted to end the battle as soon as possible, so under this slash, it could be said that he had given up defending. At the same time, after Xiao Chen successfully blocked the attack, a smile appeared on his face. "You are too impatient." Xiao Chen already knew that Hua Ze was getting impatient, so when Hua Ze made that move, Xiao Chen already knew that victory was in his hands. His own attack couldn't cause any harm to Xiao Chen, and he had given up defending. In front of Xiao Chen, Hua Ze was naturally wide open. As soon as his voice fell, without waiting for Hua Ze's reply, Xiao Chen pointed his finger and instantly used the Ganjiang sword finger. A blood-red sword light flashed and shot towards Hua Ze like lightning. In the face of Xiao Chen's attack, Hua Ze's expression changed drastically. However, it was already too late. Hua Ze could only try his best to avoid his vital parts. At such a close distance, it was very difficult to completely defend and avoid the attack of the Ganjiang sword finger. Hence, Hua Ze could only choose to avoid his vital parts. Hua Ze forcefully dodged to the side. The Ganjiang sword finger instantly broke through Hua Ze's chest and avoided his vital parts. However, he was still seriously injured. The Taoist master was directly sent flying. He then fell heavily to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. He struggled to stand up. However, at this moment, a long sword was placed horizontally on Hua Ze's neck. At the same time, Xiao Chen looked down at Hua Ze and said, "You have lost." Xiao Chen's long sword was already placed horizontally on Hua Ze's neck. As long as he moved forward a little, Hua Ze's head would fall to the ground. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Hua Ze's expression turned ugly. However, in his heart, he knew that he had indeed lost. Everything had happened too quickly. Xiao Chen had caught Hua Ze's mistake and caught up with him. Hua Ze had lost in an instant. Looking at Xiao Chen standing proudly with his sword in the ring, everyone present was stunned. He had won. Hua Ze, who was known as the #1 person among the younger generation in Danyang County, had actually lost. He had lost to an unknown disciple of the Tianqi sect. Just as the winner was decided between Xiao Chen and Hua Ze, the talisman array around the ring slowly dissipated. At the same time, Guqi, who was on the high platform, looked at the Qingyang sect master with a smile and said, "Brother Hua, it seems that our Tianqi sect has won this time." Hearing Guqi's words, the Qingyang sect master said in a low voice, "Our skills are inferior. Brother Gu, you can choose at will from the 10 spiritual stone veins." Xiao Chen had defeated Hua Ze. As such, the Tianqi sect had also won 3 out of 5 battles and had successfully won this year's 2-sect grand tournament. Guqi was also the first to choose from the 10 spiritual stone veins in the hands of the 2 sections. After he had chosen, the remaining 4 veins belonged to the Qingyang sect. The Qingyang sect master did not expect to lose at all. Moreover, it was Hua Ze. Naturally, it was difficult for him to accept such an outcome. As soon as he finished speaking, he looked indifferently at Xiao Chen in the ring below. He was silent and nobody knew what he was thinking. The 5 battles had finally ended successfully. However, the 2-sect grand tournament had not been forgotten. Later, the Tianlang Empire would hold a grand banquet and the 2 sects would be invited to attend. After obtaining victory, Xiao Chen and the others did not need to worry about the following matters. They came to the resting area specially prepared for everyone by the imperial family. There was still some time before the banquet began. After the battle, Xiao Chen and the others had consumed a lot of energy and needed to recuperate. At the same time, they also needed to change their clothes and wash the bloodstains on them. There were special palace maids in charge of serving Xiao Chen and the others. After taking a comfortable bath and changing into a clean set of clothes, Xiao Chen's injuries had stabilized with the help of healing elixirs. Although he had not recovered yet, as long as he did not fight again, there would not be any major problems. Just as Xiao Chen finished changing, Gu Lingyao, who had also changed into a new set of clothes, skipped over. She looked at Xiao Chen with a bright smile on her face and said, "Junior brother Wang Huan, I really did not expect you to be able to defeat Hua Zhe." Chapter 450. At first glance, Gu Lingyao's smile looked very innocent. Coupled with her pure appearance, it would indeed make people think that she was a little girl who had not seen much of the world. However, if one really thought so, one would be gravely mistaken. It was undeniable that Gu Lingyao was young and looked very innocent. However, under this innocent appearance, Gu Lingyao hid a clever heart. This little girl had always been clever and quick-witted. Xiao Chen had already experienced this a long time ago. Therefore, even though Gu Lingyao's smile looked very innocent, Xiao Chen did not believe it at all and said with a fake smile, "Don't worry about it," Xiao Chen said. "That's right. I'm afraid that I'll be the one to lose." "Is that so? Senior brother is really humble. Let's go, the banquet is already prepared. Senior brother Chao He and the rest are already waiting outside the courtyard," Gu Lingyao said with a smile as she looked at Xiao Chen with bright eyes. She did not reveal Xiao Chen's identity. However, she was becoming more and more curious about Xiao Chen. She was curious about Xiao Chen's identity, curious about Xiao Chen's appearance, and of course, curious about why Xiao Chen wanted to impersonate Wang Huan. Gu Lingyao did not care about the whereabouts of the real Wang Huan. Furthermore, with Gu Lingyao's intelligence, how could she not guess that since Xiao Chen had appeared here and impersonated her, the real Wang Huan was most likely dead? Together with Gu Lingyao and the rest, the 5 of them quickly arrived at the Great Hall of the Heavenly Wolf Empire's Imperial Palace. The grand meeting of the 2 sects was being held in the Heavenly Wolf Empire this time around. The Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire had naturally spent a lot of money to host a grand banquet to welcome the experts from the 2 sections. The grand hall was already filled with tables, chairs, and food. At the same time, the people from the 2 great sects and the Heavenly Wolf Empire were chatting with each other. Laughter could be heard from time to time. After sizing up the surroundings, Xiao Chen didn't notice Gu Qi and the sect master of the Azure Sun sect. Obviously, the 2 of them hadn't come to participate in the banquet. As for where they'd gone, it wasn't difficult to guess. Obviously, Gu Qi and the sect master of the Azure Sun sect were accompanied by someone else, and it was the Dao Emperor realm experts of the Skywolf Empire. As a half-saint expert, the Emperor of the Celestial Wolf Empire was not on the same level as Gu Qi because the Emperor of the Celestial Wolf Empire was only at the Dao Master realm, just like Chu Mu, the Emperor of the Moonless Empire. Above him was the retired Emperor, who was at the Dao King realm. Therefore, Gu Qi and the sect master of the Qingyang sect could only be accompanied by the retired Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Moreover, it was definitely beneficial for the Heavenly Wolf Empire to establish a good relationship with the 2 sections. The 2 sect masters weren't present, but all the elders were present. Just as Xiao Chen was sizing up the surroundings, some of the nobles of the Heavenly Wolf Empire took the initiative to surround him. Xiao Chen's group of 5 were all elite disciples of the Celestial Equal Sect, and they would definitely become pillars of support for the Celestial Equal Sect in the future. It was even to the extent that it wasn't impossible for them to join the hallowed sect to cultivate. So, they naturally didn't dare slight Xiao Chen's group of 5. A few nobles of the Celestial Wolf Empire led their disciples over to Xiao Chen and looked at Xiao Chen as they spoke with friendly smiles on their faces. "Young friend Wang Huan, you're truly a young hero. After this battle, your name will definitely resound throughout Danyang County." They'd already found out about Xiao Chen's identity, so they spoke with extreme enthusiasm as soon as they spoke. When he heard this, Xiao Chen's expression was calm as he replied, "Seniors, you're too kind. Haha, there's no need to be modest. Come, let's have a drink." When he heard Xiao Chen's words, a white-haired old man laughed heartily as he took the initiative to invite Xiao Chen for a drink. This banquet actually didn't have any special meaning. It was nothing more than a chance for both sides to get to know each other and for the Celestial Wolf Empire to do their part as a host. After drinking 4 or 5 cups of wine with the nobles of the Celestial Wolf Empire, they naturally introduced their disciples to Xiao Chen. Based on the combat prowess that Xiao Chen had displayed today, it was obvious that he would achieve great things in the future. Therefore, there was no harm in letting their juniors get to know Xiao Chen now. Xiao Chen wasn't in the mood to talk nonsense with these guys. He only had one goal, and that was the Bloodwolf King. So, while he was chatting with the crowd, Xiao Chen's gaze was always on the Bloodwolf King. In fact, as soon as Xiao Chen entered the hall, he had already seen the Bloodwolf King in a red robe. At this time, he was chatting with an elder of the Qingyang sect. They were drinking and chatting, bursting into laughter from time to time. It seemed that the two were chatting happily. Xiao Chen knew very well that in order to rescue his mother, he had to find a way to sneak into the Bloodwolf Palace. But how? The best way was naturally to befriend the Bloodwolf King and let him personally bring him in. In this way, Xiao Chen would have a way to inquire about his mother's whereabouts and then carry out the rescue operation. He had been thinking about how to get close to the Bloodwolf King. After all, as one of the 4 great princes of the Celestial Wolf Empire, it was obviously impossible for the Bloodwolf King to take the initiative to greet him. In the eyes of the Bloodwolf King, he had a cultivation of the Dao Master Realm and had a large number of troops. In the eyes of the Bloodwolf King, only the elders with real power in the 2 sects were worthy of his attention. As for a junior like Xiao Chen, although he was talented, he was not worthy of the Bloodwolf King's deliberate befriending. He had to think of a way. Just as Xiao Chen was thinking secretly, Gu Lingyao, who had been observing Xiao Chen's every move, suddenly moved her head close to Xiao Chen's ear and whispered, "Why? Are you very interested in the Bloodwolf King?" It had to be said that Gu Lingyao was indeed smart. She had guessed this just by his subtle movement. Hearing Gu Lingyao's words, Xiao Chen did not know how to answer. After all, he could not tell Gu Lingyao about it. However, Gu Lingyao obviously did not intend to get to the bottom of it. At the same time, Xiao Chen did not know that Gu Lingyao had long known that he was not the real Wang Huan. Therefore, all along, Gu Lingyao had guessed that Xiao Chen must have some purpose to use Wang Huan's identity to sneak into the Tianqi sect. At this time, Xiao Chen had always been very concerned about the Bloodwolf King. How could the intelligent Gu Lingyao not think that the Bloodwolf King must have a direct relationship with Xiao Chen's actions? Therefore, before Xiao Chen could speak, Gu Lingyao whispered, "I can introduce you to the Bloodwolf King. Previously, the Bloodwolf King came to the Tianqi sect a few times. Father did not have time, but I received him a few times." Gu Lingyao and the Bloodwolf King knew each other. Hearing this, Xiao Chen was slightly taken aback, but he quickly understood. Although Gu Lingyao was also a junior, her identity was different. Her father, Gu Lingyao, was a true half-saint expert and the sect master of the Tianqi sect. Therefore, the Blood Wolf King naturally would not treat Gu Lingyao as an ordinary junior when he treated her. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation. Chapter 451. Shao Chen naturally did not doubt that Gu Lingyao knew the Blood Wolf King. With Gu Lingyao's identity, not to mention the Blood Wolf King, even the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire would not dare to offend her. After all, in the entire Danyang region, anyone with a bit of status knew that Gu Lingyao was Gu Qi's treasure and he only had one daughter. Therefore, Gu Lingyao could definitely be said to be Gu Qi's reverse scale. The only daughter of a half-saint expert, such an identity was indeed enough to do whatever she wanted in Danyang County. Suddenly mentioning that she knew the Blood Wolf King, Gu Lingyao continued. You want to get to know the Blood Wolf King? I can introduce you. Before Shao Chen could speak, Gu Lingyao took the initiative to speak. Hearing this, Shao Chen was stunned at first, but he soon realized that something was wrong. Things were a little strange. Why would Gu Lingyao take the initiative to help him get to know the Blood Wolf King? Moreover, his current identity was Wang Huan, and Wang Huan's grandfather was the great elder of the Tianqi sect, a Dao Emperor realm expert. In this way, it was completely no problem to use Wang Huan's identity to get close to the Blood Wolf King. Of course, Wang Huan's identity was definitely not as useful as Gu Lingyao's, but it did not matter. Gu Lingyao obviously did not give Shao Chen time to think. She took the initiative to grab Shao Chen's wrist and almost pulled Shao Chen towards the Blood Wolf King. The Blood Wolf King, who was originally chatting with the Qingyang sect elder, saw Gu Lingyao take the initiative to walk towards him, and a trace of doubt unconsciously flashed in his eyes. However, he soon revealed a warm smile. After exchanging a few words with the Qingyang sect elder, he turned around and took the initiative to greet her. Miss Gu. He took the initiative to greet Gu Lingyao in an extremely warm manner. Hearing the Blood Wolf King's words, Gu Lingyao smiled slightly and turned to look at Shao Chen. Seeing that Shao Chen's expression was normal, Gu Lingyao smiled and said, Your Highness, you're too polite. I haven't had a drink with you today. The last time you went to the Tianqi sect, my father kept praising you. Gu Lingyao's words were very polite, but the Blood Wolf King was obviously surprised. Sect Master actually praised me? Although he knew that Gu was talking nonsense, the Blood Wolf King could not help but be secretly delighted to hear it. After all, Gu was a half-saint expert. How could he not be happy to be praised by a half-saint expert? Immediately, the Blood Wolf King became even more enthusiastic as he said, Miss Gu is too kind. How could I possibly catch the sect leader's eye? In front of Gu Lingyao, the Blood Wolf King naturally did not dare to be arrogant. After some simple pleasantries, Gu Lingyao introduced Shao Chen to the Blood Wolf King. Your Highness, Lingyao's senior brother is Wang Huan. His grandfather is the great elder of our Tianqi sect. The Blood Wolf King should know Elder Wang, right? Upon hearing that Shao Chen was actually the great elder's grandson, the Blood Wolf King smiled kindly. I've naturally heard of Elder Wang's name. Young Master Wang's performance today has indeed opened my eyes. You're indeed a young hero. I admire you. Although the great elder's cultivation was not as high as Gu Qi's, the Blood Wolf King obviously would not brush him off. Hearing the Blood Wolf King's words, Shao Chen smiled and said, Your Highness is too kind. After a seemingly lively conversation, the three of them raised their cups and drank together. Gently putting down the wine cup in his hand, Gu Lingyao said with an innocent face, I've long heard that Your Highness is an elegant person. It's said that the scenery in Your Highness's mansion is incomparable to the palace. To be honest, I really want to visit Your Highness's mansion. Gu Lingyao actually took the initiative to suggest going to the Blood Wolf King's mansion. Hearing this, the Blood Wolf King was stunned. Not only that, but Shao Chen also frowned. An inexplicable look flashed across his eyes, as if he had thought of something. Obviously, neither the Blood Wolf King nor Shao Chen expected Gu Lingyao to make such a request. However, as the Blood Wolf King, he naturally would not reject Gu Lingyao request. Furthermore, if he could build a good relationship with Gu Lingyao, the Blood Wolf King clearly knew what it meant. Therefore, it was only a moment of bewilderment before the Blood Wolf King laughed out loud. Haha, since Miss Gu is interested, this king will welcome you with open arms tomorrow. I only hope that Miss Gu won't mind the loneliness. The Blood Wolf King readily agreed. This was normal. If it was someone else who made such a request, the Blood Wolf King might have rejected it. However, since it was Gu Lingyao, the Blood Wolf King naturally would not reject her. Hearing the Blood Wolf King's nod, Gu Lingyao smiled and said, "Then I will disturb your highness tomorrow. Since this is the case, I will not disturb your highness any further. Since your highness still has many old friends present today, I will take my leave. Miss Gu, take care. This king will welcome Miss Gu tomorrow." Hearing Gu Lingyao's words, the Blood Wolf King said. He indeed had many old friends to entertain. Just because of one sentence, Gu Lingyao became Shao Chen and solved the problem of how to enter the Blood Wolf Palace. However, Shao Chen was not happy at all. This was because at this moment, Shao Chen was certain that his identity had been exposed. Gu Lingyao was already in such a state. If Shao Chen did not notice anything, then he would be too stupid. First of all, if Gu Lingyao was certain that he was Wang Huan, she would not have taken the initiative to help him enter the Blood Wolf Palace. There was only one explanation, and that was that Gu Lingyao had seen through his identity. Or perhaps, she had begun to suspect him. Furthermore, considering the various things that Gu Lingyao had done to him, Shao Chen was certain that Gu Lingyao had guessed his identity. His identity had been exposed. This was definitely a big deal. After all, if his identity was exposed before his mother was rescued, he would be in big trouble. However, what Shao Chen could not figure out was that since Gu Lingyao had seen through his identity, why did he still help him? Shouldn't he have let the experts from the Celestial Equal Sect take him down? After all, with Gu Lingyao's intelligence, how could she not know that since he had used Wang Huan's identity to appear here, then the real Wang Huan would not have a good ending? Not only did he not let the experts from the Celestial Equal Sect take him down, but he even took the initiative to help him enter the Blood Wolf Palace. Gu Lingyao's actions made Shao Chen puzzled. His heart was in a mess. Sensing the change in Shao Chen, Gu Lingyao smiled and thought to herself that he was not stupid. Then, Gu Lingyao took the initiative to pull Shao Chen out of the hall. The palace was huge. Soon, the two of them arrived at a remote garden. Looking at Shao Chen, Gu Lingyao said with a smile, "Tell me, who are you? Why are you pretending to be Wang Huan? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 452. This was a very remote and sparsely populated garden with an extremely beautiful environment. However, at this moment, Shao Chen was not in the mood to appreciate the scenery in the garden at all. Gu Lingyao's words echoed in his ears as he stared at Gu Lingyao, who was still smiling brightly. "Tell me, who are you and why are you pretending to be Wang Huan?" Gu Lingyao's voice echoed in Shao Chen's ears, but he was still discovered. Now that he thought about it carefully, Gu Lingyao had probably seen through his identity a long time ago. At this moment, Shao Chen's heart calmed down because Shao Chen keenly grasped a key point. Since Gu Lingyao had seen through his identity, she did not expose him directly, nor did she let the experts of the Celestial Equal Sect take him down. This way there was still room for negotiation. His mood gradually calmed down. Although Shao Chen was not yet 30 years old, the things he had experienced were definitely not comparable to ordinary people of his age. Therefore, Shao Chen knew very well that the more dangerous the situation was, the more he had to remain calm. Once he panicked, he would only be consigned to eternal damnation. Looking at Shao Chen, who was deep in thought, Gu Lingyao did not urge him. She stared at Shao Chen with a smile and patiently waited for his answer. After a moment of silence, Shao Chen quickly smiled at Gu Lingyao and said, Miss Gu is really smart. However, since you have already seen through my identity, why didn't you send the experts of the Celestial Equal sect to take me down? You even dared to bring me here alone. At this point, Xiao Qin looked around and smiled. It seems that very few people come here. Miss Gu's strength should be inferior to mine, right? There was a faint threat in his words, but after hearing Xiao Qian's words, Gu Lingyao did not change her expression. On the contrary, she replied with a pure smile. But you can't take me down in an instant. Once you do, my father will rush over immediately. At that time, I think you won't be able to escape even if you have wings. She was fearless. Hearing this, Xiao Qin instantly understood that the person who wanted to see through his identity the most was not Gu Lingyao, but his father, Gu Qi. Helplessly shaking his head and smiling bitterly, Xiao Qin did not avoid anything and said softly in front of Gu Lingyao, "It seems that I'm too naive. Trying to deceive a saint-level expert with a mere disguise technique is ridiculous." After saying that, without waiting for Gu Lingyao's answer, Xiao Qin looked directly at her. The smile on his face slowly, and he said very seriously, "All right, since you have seen through my identity, let's talk openly and honestly." As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Qin took out a handkerchief. He then took out a bottle of medicine and dripped it onto the handkerchief. He then used the handkerchief to wipe his face. The potion was specially used to cleanse the disguise technique. With a wipe, the disguise technique would disappear instantly. Seeing that Xiao Qin had removed his disguise, Gu Lingyao couldn't help but feel curious. From the beginning, she had been looking forward to the identity of the person who impersonated Wang Huan. What kind of appearance did he have? At the same time, he was so powerful. What exactly was he anyway? No matter what, Gu Lingyao had always been very interested in Xiao Qin. Just as Gu Lingyao was secretly looking forward to it, Xiao Qin removed his disguise. The handkerchief in his hand slowly moved away from his face. At the same time, Xiao Qin's original appearance appeared before Gu Lingyao's eyes. Previously, Gu Lingyao had guessed countless times what Xiao Qin's true appearance looked like. Now that she finally saw it with her own eyes, she was completely stunned. However, perhaps it should be said that she was attracted to it. Wang Huan's appearance wasn't bad, and he could be considered as an elegant young master. However, compared to Xiao Qin, he was nothing. Especially after removing his disguise, Xiao Qin unconsciously exuded an aura that attracted Gu Lingyao even more. After a long while, Gu Lingyao slowly returned to her senses. At this moment, Xiao Qin smiled and said, "Let's get to know each other again. My name is Xiao Qin and I'm from the Moonless Empire." "You're from the Moonless Empire?" Upon hearing Xiao Qin's words, Gu Lingyao asked doubtfully. "That's right. This time, I had no choice but to impersonate Wang Huan," Xiao Qin said. "Oh, no choice? Why?" "Miss Gu, don't be anxious. Before talking about my own matters, shouldn't Miss Gu talk about yourself first? After all, I've already shown you enough sincerity, but Miss Gu doesn't seem to have anything to say." Before figuring out what Gu Lingyao wanted, Xiao Qin naturally wouldn't reveal any information about his mother. After all, this was an important matter. Since Gu Lingyao had seen through his identity but didn't expose him, Xiao Qin was very curious about what Gu Lingyao wanted. Upon hearing this, Gu Lingyao didn't refuse. In her opinion, since Xiao Qin had revealed his true appearance, he had indeed shown enough sincerity. Therefore, Gu Lingyao didn't hesitate and told him about her father's intentions. In fact, it was also Gu Lingyao's idea to take the initiative to make things clear tonight. During the day, Xiao Qin displayed absolute strength and defeated Hua Zhe. This made Gu Qi think highly of Xiao Qin in his heart. Therefore, in Gu Qi's opinion, some things could be made clear. Moreover, Gu Qi thought highly of Xiao Qin. At the same time, Tianqi sect urgently needed someone like Xiao Qin because the Glory sect selection was about to begin. Gu Lingyao looked at Xiao Qin with pure eyes and said slowly, "Actually, from the first time he saw you, Father already knew that you weren't Wang Huan. However, Father didn't point it out because he saw that you were extraordinary. Therefore, Father wants you to enter Tianqi sect. Gu Lingyao's words were very direct. However, Xiao Chen was stunned when he heard this. Then, he asked doubtfully, "You want me to enter Tianqi sect? Are you kidding? Since I can stand here using Wang Huan's identity, both you and your father should have guessed Wang Huan's fate, right?" He didn't expect Gu Qi to want him to enter Tianqi sect. This was simply unexpected. One must know that Gu Qi was a sage to be expert. How could he be a muddle-headed person? Now that he could appear here using Wang Huan's identity, anyone could guess Wang Huan's fate. Wang Huan was the grandson of the Great Elder. If Gu Qi wanted him to enter Tianqi sect, wouldn't he be forcing the Great Elder to his death? Not only did Gu Qi not capture the murderer of his grandson, but he even wanted him to enter Tianqi sect. If the Great Elder knew about this, wouldn't he go crazy? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 453. She didn't understand what Gu Qi's motive was. Since he could become the Great Elder, Wang Huan's grandfather was in existence above everyone else in the Tianqi sect. Gu Qi's actions clearly didn't care about the Great Elder's feelings at all. The smile on Gu Lingyao's face slowly faded in the face of Xiao Chen's questioning, and her tone gradually turned cold. "I believe you have more or less understood the situation of the Tianqi sect during this period of time. In the past 10 years, no, it should be 20 years, the Tianqi sect situation has been getting worse and worse. Compared to the Qingyang sect, it's getting weaker. Of course, this weakness doesn't refer to the experts of the older generation from both sides, but to the younger disciples. You should have seen what happened today. During the two sects' grand meeting, each side sent 5 disciples to fight. The 5 disciples from the Qingyang sect were all monarchs, while all the younger disciples of the Tianqi sect added together couldn't even gather 5 monarchs. Do you know why? Gu Lingyao said slowly. Xiao Chen had already guessed a little when she heard that. After glancing at Xiao Chen, Gu Lingyao also believed that Xiao Chen had already guessed it given her wisdom. However, she still directly told Xiao Chen the answer. The reason is the battle between the Great Elder and the Second Elder. In the past 20 years, many talented disciples of the Tianqi sect have been killed for unknown reasons. The culprits are the Great Elder and the Second Elder. It wasn't a secret that the Great Elder and the Second Elder were fighting for fame and fortune in the Tianqi sect. Even Xiao Chen had heard a little about it during this period of time. However, she didn't expect that the two of them would actually kill the disciples of the sect. In fact, Gu Lingyao had not finished speaking. Logically speaking, whether it was the first elder or the second elder, since they were both elders of the Tianqi sect, they should not harm their own sect's disciples. However, the two of them had been bribed by the Qingyang sect one after another 20 years ago. Knowing that the battle between the two elders was becoming more and more intense, the Qingyang sect had secretly bribed the two of them. They were willing to help the two of them obtain power in the Tianqi sect. The condition was very simple. The two of them had to secretly help the Qingyang sect eliminate the genius disciples of the Tianqi sect. They knew very well that the development of a sect did not depend on the experts of the older generation, but on the younger generation. Therefore, the Qingyang sect had used the first elder and second elder to assassinate many disciples of the Tianqi sect over the past 20 years. It was laughable that these two idiots did not realize that this was the Qingyang sect's scheme to bribe the two of them at the same time. However, this was not their intention. Therefore, the two of them actually agreed to the Qingyang sect's request and began to secretly help them kill the disciples of the Tianqi sect. The first elder didn't know that the Qingyang sect had bribed the second elder while he was bribed. At the same time, the second elder didn't know that the Qingyang sect had bribed the first elder. As a result, these two idiots became the targets of the Qingyang sect. They secretly assisted the Qingyang sect and killed many disciples of the Tianqi sect. It was precisely because of their actions that Gu Qi had already made up his mind to eliminate the two of them after learning about it. Therefore, even though Xiao Chen had killed Wang Huan, it was nothing to Gu Qi because the first elder and second elder had already been sentenced to death by Gu Qi. Therefore, Xiao Chen did not have to worry about the first elder at all after joining the Tianqi sect because Xiao Chen might never see the first elder again. The actions of the two elders had completely infuriated Gu Qi. After hearing Gu Lingyao's words, Xiao Chen chose to believe him for the time being and immediately asked, "All right, let's say I believe you for the time being. However, since your father wants me to join the Tianqi sect, he must have a motive. This is the reason why he didn't expose me, right?" "Yes." After hearing Xiao Chen's words, Gu Lingyao nodded without hiding anything. "I'd like to hear the details," Xiao Chen said. Xiao Chen needed to know Gu Qi's true motive so that he could judge whether he could trust Gu Qi or not. At the same time, Xiao Chen was also very clear that if he could really get the help of the Tianqi sect, then the matter of rescuing his mother could be said to be in the bag. Gu Qi could even directly ask the Bloodwolf King for his daughter. In the face of Gu Qi's request, the Bloodwolf King would not dare to refuse. Of course, the premise was that Gu Qi must be trustworthy. Faced with Xiao Chen's question, Gu Lingyao quickly explained everything to Xiao Chen truthfully. "Have you heard of the sage sect selection?" According to Gu Lingyao's explanation, the reason why Gu Qi wanted Xiao Chen to join the Tianqi sect was because of the sage sect selection. To put it bluntly, the sage sect selection was a process for Tianfeng Xingzong to recruit disciples. Of course, this process did not recruit ordinary disciples, but elite disciples or even core disciples. Every 30 years, Tianfeng Xingzong would hold a sage sect selection. Once one passed the sage sect selection, they would directly become a disciple of Tianfeng Xingzong. Moreover, they would not be ordinary disciples, but at the very least, elite disciples. It was even possible for them to become core disciples. It was also because of this that the sage sect selection of Tianfeng Xingzong was extremely sensational every time. Every time the sage sect selection began, all the major sects in the 12 counties under Tianfeng Mansion would sign up for their respective genius disciples. To put it bluntly, Tianfeng Xingzong was the ruler of the entire Tianfeng Mansion. There were true saints in the sect. If one could join the sage sect, it would be greatly beneficial to both the person and the force they belonged to. However, it was not so simple to pass the sage sect selection. The elimination rate of the sage sect selection was so high that it was simply shocking. Every time, there would be tens of thousands of people signing up. However, in the end, there would be less than 20 people who would pass in the end. Moreover, the requirements to sign up for the sage sect selection were very high. One had to be below 30 years old and have a cultivation level of Tao querying realm. It was because of the high difficulty and some of the rules that Gu Qi wanted Xiao Chen to join the Tianqi sect and represent the Tianqi sect in this sage sect selection. After all, in the past 20 years, many of the young disciples of the Tianqi sect, especially the talented ones, had been killed by the Qingyang sect because of the first elder and second elder. This had led to a huge gap in the younger generation of the Tianqi sect. Therefore, there was a greater need for someone to join the Tianfeng Xingzong to cultivate. After all, the development of a force could not be separated from the younger generation. Gu Lingyao told Xiao Chen about Gu Qi's true intentions. Of course, this was also Gu Qi's intention. After saying all this, Gu Lingyao looked at Xiao Chen and said, "How is it? Do you understand now?" Gu Lingyao explained in detail. Hearing this, Xiao Chen nodded and said, "I understand. I understand very well. Sage sect selection? So that's how it is." Because Gu Qi wanted him to represent the Tianqi sect in the sage sect selection, Gu Qi did not expose his identity. Of course, there was another reason, which was that the first elder and second elder had already been sentenced to death by Gu Qi. Therefore, Gu Qi naturally would not vent his anger on him because of Wang Huan. Gu Qi might even secretly think that it was a good thing that he had killed Wang Huan. Chapter 454. After hearing Gu Lingyao's explanation, Shao Chen fell into deep thought. He was considering whether he could trust the Tianqi sect or not. Gu Lingyao didn't urge Shao Chen. Of course, although she told Shao Chen the truth, there were still some things that Gu Lingyao didn't mention. Gu Qi had guessed that Shao Chen wasn't from the Tianhe continent. Of course, this was also under Gu Qi's orders. As for why, Gu Lingyao didn't know. After a long while, Shao Chen finally made his decision. The reason why he thought for so long wasn't because Shao Chen was indecisive, but because this matter concerned his mother's safety. Shao Chen couldn't be careless in the slightest. Having made his decision, Shao Chen looked up at Gu Lingyao and said, "Can I trust you?" "Of course," Gu Lingyao said. "Okay, then I can join the Tianqi sect. But before that, I need the Tianqi sect to help me once," Shao Chen said directly. Gu Lingyao wasn't surprised to hear Shao Chen's words. She had already expected it. With a slight smile, Gu Lingyao said, "Is it about you sneaking into the Tianlang Empire?" "Yes, my mother is under house arrest by the Blood Wolf King. I want to save her. If the Tianqi sect is willing to help, then things will be much simpler," Shao Chen said after hearing Gu Lingyao's words. Shao Chen didn't have any resistance to joining the Tianqi sect. First of all, as one of the two major sects in Danyang County, the cultivation environment of the Tianqi sect was definitely better than the Royal Academy of the Wuyue Empire. Moreover, the Tianqi sect had Gu Qi, a half-step saint. It could be seen that in terms of cultivation environment, the three great empires couldn't catch up to the two major sections. Moreover, after entering the Tianqi sect, Shao Chen would have the qualifications to participate in the selection of the sage sects. In this way, he would have the opportunity to enter the Tianfeng Shengzong. Wasn't this the purpose of Shao Chen coming to the Tianhe continent? In this way, what reason did Shao Chen have to refuse? He wasn't against joining the Celestial Equal sect. In addition, Shao Chen thought that if the Celestial Equal sect was really willing to help, then Gu Qi only needed to say a word and the Blood Wolf King would definitely offend them. After all, Gu Qi was a half-saint expert. The Blood Wolf King probably had to give him some face. He already had a plan in mind, but Gu Lingyao soon felt like a bucket of cold water had been poured over his head. Looking at Shao Chen, Gu Lingyao said, "You want my father to go directly to the Blood Wolf King and ask him for his mother?" Shao Chen had already told Gu Lingyao the truth about his mother, and Gu Lingyao quickly guessed that Shao Chen wanted Gu Qi to ask for his mother. Hearing this, Shao Chen nodded. Seeing this, Gu Lingyao smiled bitterly and helplessly. If it were any other time, it would be fine. But now, if you ask my father to ask for her, I'm afraid it will harm your mother instead. What do you mean? It's very simple. At this time, not only is the Celestial Equal sect in the Heavenly Wolf Empire, there is also the Qingyang sect. Just now, you said it yourself that the Blood Wolf King has placed your mother under house arrest. As such, he naturally values your mother very much. If my father asks for her, the Blood Wolf King may be afraid, but will he be willing to obediently release your mother? If it were any other time, the Blood Wolf King might give my father face, but now he definitely won't because the Qingyang sect is also in the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Think about it, if my father asks for her, but he is unwilling to release her, what will he do? Ask for help from the Qingyang sect. Hearing Gu Lingyao's words, Shao Chen also quickly realized the problem and said without hesitation. Hearing Shao Chen's answer, Gu Lingyao also nodded slightly to express his agreement. That's right. When the time comes, the Blood Wolf King will definitely ask the Qingyang sect for help. In this way, the Qingyang sect will definitely come forward to stop him. With the Qingyang sect around, do you think the Blood Wolf King will still give my father face? You should know that the two great sects don't have the final say in Danyang County. Although the two great sects have sage-level experts, the three great empires have millions of troops. The two great sects have more experts than the three great empires, but the three great empires can also use the number of people. With the lives of millions of warriors as the price, they may not be able to kill a sage-level expert, but they can definitely cripple or injure him. Therefore, the three great empires and the two great sects are actually equal. It's impossible to make the Blood Wolf King obediently submit. Therefore, the only way is to rescue him secretly. Gu Lingyao directly rejected Xiao Chen's idea. After her reminder, Xiao Chen also quickly understood that his idea was indeed a little naive. Gu Lingyao was right. The three great empires and the two great sects were equal. In principle, the three great empires were not afraid of the two great sects, but because there was no conflict of interest between the two, no one wanted to provoke the other. They could only rescue him secretly. Hearing this, Xiao Chen nodded slightly. As for Gu Lingyao, she continued to speak. But you can rest assured that with us secretly helping you, the success rate is definitely above 80%. Tomorrow, we will go to the residence of the Blood Wolf King. I will help you delay the Blood Wolf King. At that time, you will find an opportunity to leave and find where your mother is imprisoned. This way, it will be much easier to rescue her. Hearing Gu Lingyao's words, Xiao Chen nodded slightly. With Gu Lingyao delaying the Blood Wolf King, it would be easier for him to carry out the operation. They could be considered to have had a heart-to-heart talk. In the end, Gu Lingyao took the initiative to extend her hand and smiled at Xiao Chen. I forgot to say earlier. Welcome to the Tianqi sect, junior brother Xiao Chen. Looking at Gu Lingyao's pure smile without any impurities, Xiao Chen also extended his hand and gently shook it. He did not expect things to develop into this situation, but overall it was still good. At least he had received help from the Tianqi sect. Furthermore, Gu Qi did not blame him for killing Wang Huan. Once again, he returned to the Tianqi sect's encampment with Wang Huan's identity. After a night of silence, early the next morning, Xiao Chen and Gu Lingyao rushed to the Blood Wolf mansion. They had already discussed with the Blood Wolf King yesterday. Therefore, when Xiao Chen and Gu Lingyao arrived at the Blood Wolf mansion in a carriage, the Blood Wolf King, who received the news, personally went out to welcome them. As one of the four great princes of the Heavenly Wolf Empire, the Blood Wolf Mansion was indeed magnificent. However, Xiao Chen did not know if it was because of the Blood Wolf King's personality, but before they even entered the Blood Wolf Mansion, he could already feel a murderous aura. The Blood Wolf King quickly walked out of the courtyard with a warm smile on his face. He laughed loudly and said, "Haha, Miss Gu and young Master Wang's arrival really brings light to this prince's mansion. Come, come, this prince has already ordered the servants to prepare food and wine. There were indeed too many people last night, and this prince did not properly entertain the two of you. Today, this prince must drink to his heart's content with Miss Gu and young Master Wang." As he spoke, the Blood Wolf King warmly invited Xiao Chen and Gu Lingyao into the mansion. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 455. Under the Blood Wolf King's lead, Xiao Chen and Gu Lingyao arrived at the main hall of the front yard. Just like what the Blood Wolf King had said, he had already prepared fine wine and delicacies. "Haha, come, come. Miss Gu, young Master Wang, please take a seat." He personally invited Xiao Chen and Gu Lingyao to take a seat. The Blood Wolf King naturally sat on the main seat, while Xiao Chen and Gu Lingyao sat on either side of him. The Blood Wolf King took the initiative to raise his wine glass and said enthusiastically, "Come, let me toast to the two of you." Just as Xiao Chen had expected, the Blood Wolf King did not treat Gu Lingyao as a junior at all. Hearing the Blood Wolf King's words, Xiao Chen and Gu Lingyao also raised their wine glasses, and the three of them downed the wine at the same time. After downing the wine glass, the Blood Wolf King ate the dishes in front of him while looking at Gu Lingyao and pretending as if nothing had happened. "How is sect leader Gu?" He asked about Gu Qi's situation. Hearing this, Gu Lingyao was not surprised. After all, the Bloodwolf King valued her so much because she was Gu Lingyao's daughter. Facing the Bloodwolf King's question, Gu Lingyao smiled and said, "Thank you for your concern. My father is fine." The three of them chatted casually. Of course, Gu Lingyao and the Bloodwolf King were the ones talking most of the time. Xiao Chen seemed to have been forgotten as he sat at the side and drank silently. This was normal. Now that Xiao Chen's identity was Wang Huan, although Wang Huan's grandfather was the great elder of the Celestial Equal sect, he was obviously inferior to Gu Lingyao. Therefore, the Bloodwolf King naturally valued Gu Lingyao more. The atmosphere seemed to be good. During the conversation, the three of them drank a lot of wine. At this moment, Xiao Chen noticed that the Bloodwolf King's vigilance had gradually relaxed and immediately found an excuse to leave. Hearing Xiao Chen's request to visit the Bloodwolf mansion, the Bloodwolf King did not think much of it. Originally, he wanted to personally bring Xiao Chen and Gu Lingyao to visit the mansion. However, Hu knew that Gu Lingyao looked at Xiao Chen with a displeased expression and shouted, "You're making a fuss. If you want to go, go by yourself. I'm not going." She deliberately pretended to be angry. Hearing this, the Bloodwolf King was in a dilemma. Xiao Chen wanted to visit the Bloodwolf mansion, but Gu Lingyao did not want to go. As a result, the Bloodwolf King naturally could not personally bring Xiao Chen around. After all, he could not leave Gu Lingyao alone here. After Gu Lingyao's disturbance, the Bloodwolf King was in a dilemma for a moment. In this regard, Xiao Chen also saw it and pretended to be heroic. "Your Highness, please accompany junior sister here. I can walk around by myself." Hearing Xiao Chen's words, the Bloodwolf King thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. First of all, if Gu Lingyao did not want to go, he naturally could not leave Gu Lingyao alone here. The Bloodwolf King was clear about who was more important. Secondly, there were some important places in the mansion that were guarded, so the Bloodwolf King was not afraid that Xiao Chen would discover anything. Thinking of this, the Bloodwolf King was completely relieved. He looked at Xiao Chen and said with a smile, "Then young Master Wang should be careful. If there's anything, you can send someone to inform me." "Thank you, Your Highness." Xiao Chen bowed and thanked him. Finally, he successfully escaped. After coming out of the main hall, Xiao Chen openly strolled around the mansion. Although there were many guards along the way, they obviously knew that Xiao Chen was the Bloodwolf King's guest. Not only did they not stop him, but they were also extremely respectful. Of course, there were some places that Xiao Chen could not enter. Seemingly having nothing to do, Xiao Chen roughly found 3 places that he could enter. These 3 places were guarded by guards. Without the Bloodwolf King's order, no one could enter. Thinking about it, if his mother was really imprisoned in the Bloodwolf mansion, it was most likely in one of these 3 places. Xiao Chen wanted to find out where his mother was being held in these 3 places. After thinking for a while, he quickly came up with a target. It was a small, inconspicuous courtyard. Located in the backyard of the mansion, this small courtyard did not have the slightest bit of uniqueness. However, there were 2 guards at the entrance of the courtyard. As a result, it was obvious that this place was the most suspicious. With a goal in mind, time was tight. Although the Bloodwolf King was being delayed by Gu Lingyao, it was obvious that it would not be long. Therefore, Xiao Chen must find his mother within this period of time. Moreover, he must not arouse the Bloodwolf King's suspicion. Otherwise, the Bloodwolf King would definitely be on guard when he tried to rescue her in the future. Without hesitation, Xiao Chen walked towards the small courtyard. Xiao Chen had already passed by this small courtyard, but this time, Xiao Chen did not go to the entrance of the courtyard. Instead, he went to a corner of the courtyard. The entrance of the courtyard was guarded by the mansion's guards. Obviously, it was impossible to enter from there. Moreover, if he attacked the 2 guards, the Bloodwolf King would definitely be suspicious. With a leap, Xiao Chun quietly sneaked into the courtyard. The illusion of the small courtyard was not bad. There was a pavilion and a few rooms. However, at this time, there was not a single person in the entire courtyard. It looked a little cold and cheerless. Carefully looking around, Xiao Chun discovered that there was not a single person in the courtyard. Then, he went to the front of the few rooms. Xiao Chun was not sure if this was the place where his mother was being held. Therefore, he did not dare to be careless. He gently pushed open the first room. There was no one inside. Looking at the furnishings, it should be a study room. There was no one in the first room. Then, Xiao Chun went to the second room. Similarly, he carefully pushed open the door. This time, Xiao Chun also saw a beautiful woman in a white dress with her back facing him. Looking through the window at the distant horizon, Xiao Chun could feel a sense of sadness from the beautiful woman. For a moment, Xiao Chun was completely stunned. Although he did not see the beautiful woman's face, how could Xiao Chun not recognize that the beautiful woman in front of him was his mother, Bai Ryue? He finally saw his mother. His heart was filled with excitement. At the same time, because Bai Ryue's back was facing Xiao Chun, she did not know who the person was. However, since she was under house arrest, other than the Bloodwolf King, no one else would come here. Therefore, Bai Ryue did not turn her head and said coldly, "Get lost. No matter how many times you come, it will be the same." Bai Ryue thought that the person who came was the Bloodwolf King. However, just as Bai Ryue finished speaking, Xiao Chen's voice suddenly sounded from behind her. "Mother!" Following Xiao Chen's words, Bai Ryue's originally ice-cold face and eyes filled with sadness suddenly changed. Her body could not help but tremble slightly. Then, she unconsciously turned around. When she saw Xiao Chun standing in front of the door, Bai Ryue's first reaction was that she was hallucinating. Please add, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 456. Bai Ryue stared blankly at Xiao Chun and couldn't help but tremble slightly. She thought that she was hallucinating. After all, how could Xiao Chun appear in this place? 2 lines of tears unconsciously flowed from her eyes. Even if it was an illusion, Bai Ryue was already very satisfied to be able to see Xiao Chun, even if it was just a dream. If it weren't for the fact that she couldn't bear to part with Xiao Chun, Bai Ryue would have already committed suicide. Bai Ryue stared blankly at Xiao Chun, not daring to move. She was afraid that if she moved, Xiao Chun would disappear. Facing the dazed Bai Ryue, Xiao Chun's heart was filled with excitement. He once again called out softly, "Mother." While calling out, Xiao Chun took the initiative to walk towards Bai Ryue and immediately hugged his mother tightly. His eyes were red. At this moment Bai Ryue said in disbelief, "Chun'er, is it really you? This isn't an illusion?" "No, no, mother, it's your son. Your son came late." The mother and son hugged each other tightly, as if they were afraid that Xiao Chun would disappear. Bai Ryue hugged Xiao Chun tightly. Her arms were wrapped around Xiao Chun's waist as if she would rather die than let go. The mother and son hugged each other tightly. Bai Ryue cried silently. After a while, Xiao Chun took the initiative to break the silence. "Mother, your son has something to say." Xiao Chun knew that time was of the essence, so he had to make things clear before then so that the rescue could be carried out. Hearing this, Bai Ryue forcibly stopped crying. Then, Xiao Chun personally closed the door. The mother and son sat facing each other in the room. Looking at Bai Ryue, who had lost a lot of weight, Xiao Chun's heart ached. However, now was obviously not the time to talk about this. Looking at his mother with a serious expression, Xiao Chun said softly, "Mother, have you heard about me?" He told Bai Ryue about the general plan in his heart. At the same time, he asked Bai Ryue if she knew where the others were locked up. After all, according to Mu Feng, there were a total of 23 people. Facing Xiao Chen's question, Bai Ryue answered truthfully. The others were currently locked up in the Blood Wolf Mansion's dungeon. After learning from Bai Ryue that the others were imprisoned in the dungeon, Xiao Chen heaved a sigh of relief. As long as he knew where they were imprisoned, he would be able to formulate a more accurate rescue plan. Without wasting any time, Xiao Chen stood up and said, "Mother, I don't have much time left. I have to go back first. I will definitely come back in 2 days at most to rescue you." Obviously, they could not act today. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Bai Rui's eyes were filled with worry. Bai Rui knew how difficult it was to rescue someone from the Blood Wolf Palace. She did not want Xiao Chen to take the risk. In her heart, she would rather die than let Xiao Chen be in any danger. Therefore, Bai Rui shook her head and said, "Chener, you can't take the risk." Knowing what Bai Rui wanted to say, Xiao Chen did not give her a chance. Before Bai Rui could finish her words, Xiao Chen interrupted her. "Mother, I will definitely rescue you. I promise." After saying that, without waiting for Bai Rui's reply, Xiao Chen turned around resolutely and jumped over the wall in the blink of an eye. Successfully finding his mother was a good start. Although he still had a lot of words to say to his mother, now was not the time. After leaving Bai Rui's courtyard, Xiao Chen pretended as if nothing had happened and walked towards the main hall of the mansion. This time, when he saw his mother, Xiao Chen was secretly relieved. At least his mother was not violated. According to Bai Rui, the Blood Wolf King was very courteous to her. It seemed that he really liked his mother, so he did not force her. The only thing he did was to restrict his mother's freedom. He took good care of her in other aspects. Perhaps he wanted to use this to change his mother's mind. However, the Blood Wolf King's actions made Xiao Chen's killing intent overflow. "Old dog, you dare to touch my mother? One day, I will cut you down with my sword." No matter how good the Blood Wolf King was to his mother, since he dared to touch his mother, he would definitely die. Xiao Chen calmly returned to the main hall of the mansion. As soon as he entered the door, Xiao Chen calmed himself down and looked at the Blood Wolf King with a smile. "Your Highness's mansion is really an eye-opener for me. It's not much worse than the palace." Seeing that Xiao Chen had returned, the Blood Wolf King laughed. "Haha, young Master Wang Huan must be joking. How can my mansion be compared to the picturesque Celestial Equal Sect? There are 2 best places in Danyang County. One is occupied by the Qingyang sect, and the other is the Celestial Equal Sect. Compared to the Celestial Equal Sect, my mansion is no different from the countryside." Xiao Chen's return made the Blood Wolf King secretly relieved. The 3 of them continued to drink and chat until dusk. Xiao Chen and Gu Lingyao left the mansion under the personal escort of the Blood Wolf King. "Thank you for your hospitality today, Your Highness. If you have time in the future, please visit the Celestial Equal Sect so that my father and I can play host to you." Before leaving, Gu Lingyao said politely, "Haha, great. I will personally pay a visit to Sect Master Gu in the future." Hearing Gu Lingyao's words, the Blood Wolf King smiled happily. He was so polite to Gu Lingyao because he wanted to get closer to Gu Lingyao. Hearing Gu Lingyao's words, the Blood Wolf King was secretly delighted. After exchanging pleasantries, Xiao Chen and Gu Lingyao got into the carriage and slowly left. After the 2 of them left, the smile on the Blood Wolf King's face slowly disappeared. He looked at the steward of the mansion and asked, "Where did Wang Huan go just now?" As expected of the cunning Blood Wolf King, he had always been on guard against Xiao Chen and Gu Lingyao. Of course, this did not mean that he had discovered anything, but it was his personality. Hearing the Blood Wolf King's words, the steward respectfully replied, "I didn't discover anything special." Although he passed by Madame's courtyard, he did not enter. Hearing that Xiao Chen had passed by Ryu's courtyard, the Blood Wolf King's face sank. However, after knowing that Xiao Chen did not enter and was only passing by, the Blood Wolf King's face eased up. "That's good." Xiao Chen's actions were nothing special. Regarding this, the Blood Wolf King was secretly relieved. On the other side, after leaving the Blood Wolf King's mansion, Gu Lingyao sat in the carriage and looked at Xiao Chen. "How was it? Did you find anything?" Yes, but we still need to plan before we can take action. Now that he had seen his mother and knew where she was being held, the next step was to take action. This was the most crucial step. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Gu Lingyao said helplessly, "Father and I can't take part in the rescue operation. After all, Father is a sage to be expert. If he takes part, his identity will soon be exposed. As a result, the Qingyang sect will definitely take the opportunity to make things difficult for you. It won't do you any good and will instead harm you." Chapter 457. Gu Lingyao said frankly. Xiao Chen had already expected this, so he did not look disappointed. Indeed, things would be much simpler with the help of the Celestial Equal Sect. However, as Gu Lingyao had said, the Celestial Equal Sect clearly could not participate in the current situation. Otherwise, the Qingyang sect would definitely take the opportunity to make things difficult for them. Just like the three great empires, the two great sects, the Tianqi sect and the Qingyang sect, could be said to be old rivals that would not rest until one of them was dead. Once a flaw appeared on one side, the other side would definitely spare no effort to launch an attack. For example, if the Tianqi sect directly helped Xiao Chen, the Qingyang sect would definitely intervene. The result would be the Qingyang sect and the Heavenly Wolf Empire joining forces. Not only would it harm Xiao Chen, but the Tianqi sect would also be in trouble. After all, how could the Qingyang sect let go of such a good opportunity? Moreover, if the Qingyang sect really joined forces with the Heavenly Wolf Empire, the sect master of the Qingyang sect might even dare to keep Gu Qi in the Heavenly Wolf Empire. It was precisely because of the Qingyang sect that the Celestial Equal Sect could not directly intervene, as a slight move would affect the whole situation. Although the Tianqi sect could not directly intervene, there were many things that the Tianqi sect could still help with. Looking at Gu Lingyao, Xiao Chen said calmly, "Can the Tianqi sect help me get a map of the Blood Wolf Mansion? And the situation of the guards in the mansion?" "Yes," Gu Lingyao nodded after pondering for a moment. After hearing Xiao Chen's words, he nodded. With the ability of the Tianqi sect, it was not difficult for them to obtain a map of the Blood Wolf Palace and the situation of the guards. Hearing this, Xiao Chen smiled and said, "When can you get it?" "Tomorrow," Gu Lingyao said. Xiao Chen had asked the Celestial Equal Sect to help him obtain a map of the Blood Wolf Palace and the situation of the guard. With these two things, Xiao Chen and the others could move more easily. However, the Celestial Equal Sect's role was not limited to this. Looking at Gu Lingyao, Xiao Chen's face gradually revealed a smile. Seeing the smile on Xiao Chen's face, Gu Lingyao immediately shook his head and smiled bitterly. "Don't say any more. I have to go back and discuss this matter with my father." "I haven't said it yet. Do you know what I want you to do?" Xiao Chen said with a smile before Gu Lingyao spoke. "What else? Aren't you just asking my father to lure the Blood Wolf King away so that you can save people?" Gu Lingyao said in a bad mood when he heard Xiao Chen's words. How could the intelligent Gu Lingyao not know what Xiao Chen wanted to do? Xiao Chen nodded with a smile when he heard Gu Lingyao's words. Indeed, that was his idea. Although the Tianqi sect could not directly intervene, if Gu Qi held a banquet in his name and lured the Blood Wolf King out of the mansion, it would be more convenient and easier for Xiao Chen to save people. However, as Gu Lingyao said, it was impossible for Gu Lingyao to lure the Blood Wolf King out of the mansion with his status. Only Gu Qi could do it. Moreover, in order to not arouse suspicion, Gu Qi had to invite the imperial family of the Heavenly Wolf Empire and the people of the Qingyang sect. Only then would the Blood Wolf King be unable to refuse. As for Xiao Chen's second request, Gu Lingyao did not directly agree. Everything depended on Gu Qi's decision. Xiao Chen did not say much and the two returned to the Tianqi sect's encampment. Soon after, Xiao Chen and Gu Lingyao parted ways and Gu Lingyao went straight to Gu Qi's residence. When Gu Lingyao arrived at Gu Qi's bamboo courtyard, Gu Qi, who was sitting alone and drinking tea, smiled and asked, "What's wrong? Is everything settled?" More or less. Gu Lingyao replied softly when he heard Gu Qi's words. Then, he told Gu Qi about Xiao Chen's two requests. The first request was nothing to the Tianqi sect. The Tianqi sect could easily obtain a map of the Blood Wolf King's mansion and the situation of the guards. However, the second request, after hearing Xiao Chen's two requests from Gu Lingyao, Gu Qi fell into deep thought. After a while, Gu Qi smiled and asked, "What do you think of this kid?" He asked Gu Lingyao. Although she did not know what her father meant, Gu Lingyao pondered for a while and replied honestly, "How should I put it? I can't see through him." She did not know how to describe Xiao Chen. After all, she could not see through Xiao Chen at all. Hearing Gu Lingyao's words, the smile on Gu Qi's face widened. If even you can't see through this kid, he must be extraordinary. If he can really kill his way out of the glory sex selection, there's no harm in helping him this time. Father, why do you place so much importance on the glory sex selection? I can pass it alone. Hearing Gu Qi's words, Gu Lingyao could not help but ask. All this while, Gu Lingyao was curious as to why Gu Qi insisted on letting Xiao Chen participate in the glory sex selection. Facing Gu Lingyao's question, a strange look flashed across Gu Qi's eyes. However, it was only for a moment. Then, he said calmly, "Father knows that you can pass the glory sex selection. However, you can't do it alone in the future." "Father, are you talking about the core disciple?" Gu Lingyao asked. Shaking his head slightly, Gu Qi did not answer. He knew that with Gu Lingyao's talent and strength, it would not be difficult for her to become a core disciple in Tianfeng Xingzong. However, this was not Gu Qi's goal. Gu Qi's real goal was still behind Tianfeng Xingzong. It was to become a saint-class family that truly controlled the Tianhe continent. Tianfeng Xingzong was not Gu Lingyao's final destination. Gu Lingyao's final destination was the Colossus that was even more powerful than Tianfeng Xingzong. Gu Lingyao had to go there because she had to. Of course, Gu Qi did not tell Gu Lingyao about this. Now was not the time. However, to go there and complete the task that Gu Lingyao had to complete, Gu Lingyao needed an absolutely powerful existence by her side. Someone who could become Gu Lingyao's strongest support. Gu Qi felt that this person had to be Xiao Chen. After a moment of silence, Gu Qi finally said slowly, "Go and call that kid over. Father will talk to him." Gu Qi did not immediately agree to Xiao Chen's second request. This was not to say that Gu Qi could not do it. However, it was not worth it. Before making a decision, Gu Qi wanted to talk to Xiao Chen personally and see if he was worth it. After hearing his father's words, Gu Lingyao did not ask any more questions. She turned and left. Soon, Xiao Chen was brought to Gu Lingyao. Gu Qi waved his hand, indicating for Gu Lingyao to leave. "You leave first. I want to talk to this kid alone." Chapter 458. You can leave now. I want to talk to this little guy alone. Hearing Gu Lingyao's words, Gu Lingyao turned and walked out of the bamboo courtyard without saying anything else. After Gu Lingyao left, Gu Qi pointed at the stone stool beside him, indicating for Xiao Chen to sit down. Then, he said indifferently, "Lingyao has already told me what you want me to do. If you want me to lure the Blood Wolf King away, I can do that, but you have to promise me one thing." Gu Qi went straight to the point. Hearing Gu Qi's words, Xiao Chen replied calmly, "Please speak, sect master." Since his identity had been exposed, Xiao Chen had completely calmed down. Moreover, Gu Qi clearly had no intention of harming him. Smiling slightly, Gu Qi looked indifferently at Xiao Chen, who still had the appearance of Wang Huan, and said indifferently, "Lingyao should have already told you that the reason why I didn't expose your identity was because I wanted you to enter the Tianqi sect and represent us in the glory sex selection. However, this isn't my real goal. Without you, with Lingyao's talent and qualifications, she can still pass the glory sex selection. As for what I need you to do, it's still later." Have you heard of the ancient sage sect? There were many things that Gu Qi did not tell Gu Lingyao. Letting Shao Chen participate in the sage sect selection was also not Gu Qi's goal. Hearing Gu Qi ask about the ancient sage sect, Shao Chen shook his head. Seeing Shao Chen shake his head, Gu Qi did not find it strange. This was because he had already guessed that Shao Chen was not from the Tianhe continent. With the same smile on his face, he calmly explained to Shao Chen. You should know that the Tianhe continent is divided into 100 counties, 18 prefectures, and 4 prefectures. A sect like the Tianqi sect can only dominate a county, while a true sage sect like the Tianfeng Xingzong can dominate a prefecture. However, neither the Tianqi sect nor the Tianfeng Xingzong can be considered a true overlord. This is because at the top, there are 4 mountains that firmly suppress all the forces in the Tianhe continent. The ancient sage sect is one of them, and its forces are spread throughout the entire ancient sage state. Although the Tianfeng Xingzong is a true sage sect, compared to the ancient sage sect, the Tianfeng Xingzong is too weak. In the Tianfeng Xingzong, although there are several saint-level experts, there is only one. But the ancient sage sect is different. There are several saint-level experts. Because there are so many saint-level experts, the ancient sage sect firmly controls everything in the ancient sage state. Even the Tianfeng Xingzong is just an insignificant ant in front of it. After briefly introducing the ancient sage state to Shao Chen, Gu Qi paused. He glanced at Shao Chen, who was still calm, and nodded with satisfaction. Then he continued. What I need you to do is to enter the Tianfeng Xingzong with Lingyao, and then enter the ancient sage sect. But in the ancient sage sect, you must become the holy son of the ancient sage sect. This is my request. Can you do it? Hearing Gu Qi's words, Shao Chen did not immediately nod. After hearing Gu Qi's words, Shao Chen roughly understood what Gu Qi meant. Gu Qi wanted him to enter the ancient sage sect with Gu Lingyao and become the holy son of the ancient sage sect himself. Shao Chen understood what Gu Qi meant, but he did not know what Gu Qi's goal was. However, Gu Qi evidently did not want to say too much and only asked Shao Chen if he could do it. After a moment of silence, Shao Chen asked, "What is the ancient sage sect's holy son?" He had never heard of a holy son before. Hearing this, Gu Qi explained, "There are a total of 10 holy sons in the ancient sage sect. Even the weakest holy son can instantly kill a king of geniuses. You can understand a holy son as an existence above a king of geniuses." Understanding a holy son as an existence above a king of geniuses? Hearing this, Shao Chen was slightly stunned. He then said, "Sect Master, I can't guarantee that I can do it, but I'll try my best." Facing Gu Qi's request, Shao Chen could not guarantee that he could do it. Firstly, he knew nothing about holy sons and had never come into contact with them. Who knew how strong they were? Secondly, when Gu Qi told him this, he was obviously holding back. At the very least, Gu Qi did not say why he wanted him to do this. Hearing Shao Chen's words, Gu Qi's smile became even brighter. He looked at Shao Chen and nodded. "Very good. If you agreed just now, perhaps I would have to reconsider if it was worth it to help you. Because you have never come into contact with holy sons, you don't know how terrifying the ancient sage sect's 10 holy sons are. Alright, let me know when you're about to take action, and I'll find an excuse to draw the Bloodwolf King away for you." With these words, Gu Qi obviously agreed to Shao Chen's request. Seeing this, Shao Chen bowed and thanked him. After leaving Gu Qi's place, Shao Chen felt more confident in his heart. Although Gu Qi still would not directly help him, he would draw the Bloodwolf King away for him. As a result, the success rate of the rescue operation would increase by a lot. After a night of silence, early the next morning, Gu Lingyao indeed sent over a map of the Bloodwolf Palace and the situation of the guards. With these things, Shao Chen immediately left the Tianqi sect's encampment and came to the seclusion of Zhang Qi and the others. They had already been hiding in the imperial capital for a long time. When Xiao Chen arrived, Gu Xiu personally brought Xiao Chen into the house. At this moment, Zhang Qi and the others were already waiting. After explaining the general situation to everyone, Zhang Qi and the others were secretly delighted when they heard that Gu Qi would draw the Blood Wolf King away for them. Immediately after, Xiao Chen took out the map of the Blood Wolf King and the records of the guard. Xiao Chen pointed at a small courtyard on the map. This was the place where Bai Ryue was being held. He slowly said, "This is where my mother is being held, while the others are being held in the underground prison of the prince's mansion. The distance between the two places is not far, but if we want to rescue them, we have to do it at the same time. In order to rescue everyone, they must act at the same time. While rescuing Zhang Jingxiang, the rest of them must also go to the palace's dungeon to rescue the others. In total, he had to rescue 23 people. With so many people, the difficulty was naturally not small. Therefore, the entire operation had to be fast, and it had to be done in one shot. Otherwise, once the guards of the Blood Wolf Mansion reacted, it would be extremely difficult to escape. Moreover, rescuing everyone from the Blood Wolf Palace was only the first step. The next step was to leave the imperial capital and return to the Moonless Empire. This series of things must be completed in the shortest time possible. Otherwise, when the Blood Wolf King reacted, it would be extremely difficult for everyone to leave the imperial capital. Xiao Chen explained his thoughts to everyone one by one. In fact, he already had a strict plan in his heart. At this moment, after hearing Xiao Chen's plan, Zhang Qi and the others did not object. After all, this was indeed the only feasible method at present. Please collect, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 459. After making the final preparations with Zhang Qi and the others, Xiao Chen bid farewell to everyone the next morning and returned to the Tianqi sect's encampment alone. After some discussion, everyone finally decided to take action tomorrow night. After making the decision, Xiao Chen told Gu Lingyao about it, and Gu Lingyao passed it on to Gu Qi. Soon, Gu Qi replied that he would personally host a banquet to invite the Blood Wolf King tomorrow night. Not only the Blood Wolf King, but Gu Qi would also invite all the influential people in the imperial capital, including the people from the Qingyang sect. Gu Qi was naturally thinking for Xiao Chen by inviting so many people at once. It could be said that Gu Qi had invited all the influential people in the imperial capital. In this way, Xiao Chen and the others could easily leave the imperial capital after rescuing Bai Ryue and the others. After hearing Gu Qi's reply, Xiao Chen was very grateful. He naturally knew Gu Qi's purpose for doing this. Originally, he only wanted Gu Qi to delay the Blood Wolf King, but Gu Qi delayed all the experts in the imperial capital. With the secret help of Gu Qi and the Tianqi sect, Xiao Chen couldn't help but secretly breathe a sigh of relief. At the same time, in the bamboo courtyard where Gu Qi lived, Gu Lingyao looked at Gu Qi and asked, "Father, you helped him lure away all the experts in the imperial capital. It should be easy to succeed, right?" "Not necessarily. Even if I can delay them for a while, it won't be enough for them to directly escape from the Heavenly Wolf Empire. You should know that even if they leave the imperial capital, it doesn't mean that they are safe," Gu Qi said indifferently after hearing Gu Lingyao's words. Gu Qi could only delay them for a while. Although he could allow Xiao Chen and the others to easily escape from the imperial capital, it didn't mean that they were safe. Once the Blood Wolf King reacted, Xiao Chen and the others would still be in danger. However, this was the only thing Gu Qi could do. If the people of the Qingyang sect were not in the Heavenly Wolf Empire, things would be fine, but now that the Qingyang sect was eyeing them covetously, it was a different story. As soon as he finished speaking, Gu Qi took out a space ring and handed it to Gu Lingyao. "Give this to that little fellow. Inside are the pills and talismans that I have prepared for him. Let him have them in case he needs them." He had specially prepared elixirs and talismans for Xiao Chen. Hearing this, Gu Lingyao nodded slightly and headed straight for Xiao Chen's residence. Although he couldn't directly help Xiao Chen, Gu Qi had indeed done a lot for Xiao Chen. After taking the interspatial ring from Gu Lingyao, Xiao Chen discovered that there were quite a lot of pills and talismans inside. Without any hesitation, Xiao Chen accepted the interspatial ring and looked at Gu Lingyao. "Thank you, Sect Master. Don't worry. If I can survive this time, I will definitely go to the Tianqi sect in the future." "Forget it. Father has already said that he will personally look for you when you return to the Moonless Empire," Gu Lingyao replied with a smile when he heard Xiao Chen's words. Everything was ready. Gu Qi had ordered people to send out the invitations one by one. All the dignitaries and experts in the capital had received Gu Qi's invitation. No one was surprised by Gu Qi's invitation. While everyone was excited to be able to attend Gu Qi's banquet, a day passed in the blink of an eye. At dusk on the second day, Xiao Chen left the Tianqi sect's encampment early and went to the residence of Zhang Qi and the others. It was drizzling. Xiao Chen, Zhang Qi and the others sat in a circle in the room, quietly waiting for night to fall. Although they had Gu Qi's help, Xiao Chen knew very well that this operation was still extremely dangerous. There was no room for the slightest carelessness. Otherwise, not only his mother, but even he and the others would probably die in the Tianlang Empire. No one spoke. Before this, Xiao Chen had already distributed the elixirs and talismans given by Gu Qi to everyone. It was not until night had completely enveloped the entire capital that Xiao Chen slowly stood up and said, "Let's go. This operation must be fast. After rescuing them, we will gather at the East Gate." Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Zhang Qi and the others also stood up and nodded with a solemn expression. Soon, under the lead of Xiao Chen, a group of people dressed in black quickly rushed to the Blood Wolf mansion under the cover of the night and drizzle. Very quickly, he arrived at a small alley beside the Blood Wolf mansion and gave Gu Xiu a signal with his eyes. Upon seeing this, Gu Xiu immediately agreed. With a leap, he instantly crossed the courtyard wall and infiltrated into the mansion. After entering the Blood Wolf mansion, he observed the surroundings and did not discover anyone. Soon after, Xiao Chen and the others also crossed the wall and entered one after another. Hiding in a corner, Xiao Chen looked at everyone and said, "Act according to the plan. Gu Xiu, come with me to rescue my mother. Senior Zhang Qi, lead the others to the dungeon to rescue the others. Remember, don't stay after rescuing them. Leave as soon as possible." It had already been arranged. When they heard Xiao Chen's words, everyone nodded. Soon after, Zhang Qi led the others to the dungeon of the mansion, while Xiao Chen and Gu Xiu hurried to the courtyard where Bai Rui resided. Earlier, Xiao Chen had already roughly understood the situation. Perhaps it was because Bai Rui's cultivation was too low, so the Blood Wolf King had only sent 2 Dao validation cultivators to guard her. Therefore, with a Dao King expert like Gu Xiu, there should not be any problems. All along the way, Xiao Chen and Gu Xiu's movements were extremely secretive. Whenever they encountered the patrolling guards of the mansion, the two of them would immediately conceal themselves. It had to be said that the mansion's security was really tight. In just a few thousand meters, Xiao Chen and Gu Xiu had already encountered 6 groups of patrolling guards. They moved stealthily along the wall. When they were only 100 meters away from Bai Rui's courtyard, another group of guards walked over. Xiao Chen and Gu Xiu squatted in a corner and did their best to conceal their auras as they calmly watched the group of guards slowly walk past them. I wonder how Zhang Qi and the others are doing. With such tight security, will Zhang Qi and the others be able to sneak into the dungeon? Xiao Chen was slightly worried. After all, Zhang Qi and the others far outnumbered him and Gu Xiu. Once there were more people, it would naturally be even more difficult to conceal themselves. Although he was worried, now was clearly not the time to think about this. The courtyard where his mother, Bai Rui, resided was right before their eyes. After the group of guards had left, Xiao Chen nodded to Gu Xiu, and then the two of them suddenly dashed out and rushed over. They arrived at Bai Rui's courtyard without any danger. According to their previous discussion, Xiao Chen would enter the courtyard to rescue his mother, while Gu Xiu would be responsible for dealing with the two Dao validation cultivators outside the courtyard. They looked at each other, and then Xiao Chen nodded slightly. When he saw this, Gu Xiu directly rushed towards the two Dao validation cultivators outside the courtyard. As for Xiao Chen, he leaped into the courtyard and headed straight for Bai Rui's room. Very soon, a shout rang out from outside the courtyard. "Who is it?" A battle immediately erupted. Chapter 460. Gu Xiu had already started fighting with the two Dao Confirmation Realm Guards. With Gu Xiu's cultivation, it wasn't difficult for him to kill two Dao Confirmation Realm cultivators. The only difficulty was that he had to be fast and kill them in one blow. While Gu Xiu was fighting with the two Dao Validation Realm Guards, Xiao Chen pushed open the door to Bai Rui's room. Bai Rui, who was sitting by the window and watching the drizzle outside, immediately turned her head when she heard the door open. "Mother, I'm here to take you away," Xiao Chen said without wasting any time. Although Bai Rui was very happy to see Xiao Chen again, she was not a woman who could not see the big picture. She knew that every second mattered at this moment. She immediately nodded and rushed out of the courtyard under Xiao Chen's lead. From the moment Xiao Chen entered the small courtyard to the moment he left with Bai Rui, less than 10 breaths had passed. When Xiao Chen brought Bai Rui to the entrance of the courtyard, Gu Xiu had just killed the two Dao Validation Realm warriors who were responsible for guarding the courtyard. Knowing that the situation was urgent and that every second mattered, Gu Xiu attacked with all his strength even though he was only facing two Dao Validation Realm warriors. He finished the battle within 10 breaths. Unfortunately, the aftermath of the battle still attracted the attention of the palace guards. At this moment, Xiao Chen sensed that someone was rushing over, so he said to Gu Xiu, "Let's go." After saying that, Xiao Chen carried Bai Rui on his back. Bai Rui's cultivation was only at the heaven realm, and her cultivation was almost entirely dependent on elixirs. Bai Rui's speed was too slow to escape, so Xiao Chen did not care about anything else and rushed out of the palace with Bai Rui on his back. At the same time that Xiao Chen successfully rescued Bai Rui, a fierce battle broke out in the palace's dungeon. The 11 Heavenly Churn Continent warriors led by Zhang Qi launched an attack on the dungeon without warning. With Zhang Qi, who was at the Dao Sovereign Realm, guarding the dungeon, the guards naturally did not have much ability to resist and were quickly annihilated. Killing her way into the dungeon, Zhang Qi finally found the 23 Heavenly Churn Continent martial artists locked up in a cell. Vice Pavilion Master. Seeing Zhang Qi, a 10,000 weapon pavilion disciple in the cell immediately called out in surprise, "Brother Zhang Qi." At the same time, a Dao King expert called out excitedly, "We're here to save you. Follow us closely and don't fall behind." In the face of everyone's surprise, Zhang Qi didn't say much and went straight to the point. At the same time as she spoke, she smashed the door of the cell with her palm. When the door was smashed, everyone only wanted to rush out of the dungeon. But at this moment, Zhang Qi suddenly had an idea. She looked at the other people who were imprisoned in the dungeon. These people were not warriors of the Heavenly Chen continent and had nothing to do with Zhang Qi. But at this time, Zhang Qi did not hesitate to save them one by one. The reason why she rescued everyone in the dungeon was naturally not because Zhang Qi was sympathetic, but because she wanted to use these prisoners to attract the attention of the palace guards. This way, everyone could take advantage of the chaos to escape. There were a total of hundreds of prisoners in the dungeon of the Blood Wolf Mansion. At this time, after these prisoners were released, Zhang Qi shouted loudly, "Everyone, if you want to live, quickly escape. Escape from the imperial capital, and you will be free to fly. Run." The prisoners who were suddenly rescued were still in a daze. At this time, when they heard Zhang Qi's angry shout, all of their faces changed and they rushed madly toward the dungeon. "That's right, Who would want to be locked up in this dark dungeon? Now that there was a chance to escape, these prisoners naturally spared no effort to run out of the prince's mansion. At the same time that these fugitives charged madly out of the dungeon, group after group of guards from the king's estate had arrived outside the dungeon successively, and over 100 fugitives had charged madly out of the dungeon before they could even set up a formation. The expression of the Tao King in the lead sank when he saw this, and he immediately shouted coldly, "Damn it, someone is trying to break out of the prison. Surround them and kill anyone who resists." He did not expect that someone would dare to break out of the prison. Along with the shout of the Tao King realm expert, several groups of palace guards, a total of 70 to 80 people, rushed toward the prisoners. At the same time, more guards rushed over. Facing the attack of the palace guards, Zhang Qi, who followed the prisoners out, shouted angrily at this time, "Kill these bastards and we can escape. Kill!" This angry shout once again aroused the killing intent in the hearts of the prisoners. These people had been locked up in the dungeon by the Blood Wolf King for dozens of years. It could be said that they had suffered a lot, so they hated the Blood Wolf King even more. Now that they had a chance to escape, how could they allow themselves to be captured without putting up a fight? Sure enough, under Zhang Qi's angry shout, all the prisoners showed signs of fighting with their lives, and they immediately engaged in a fierce battle with the palace guards. Looking at the two sides of the battle, the face of the Tao King realm expert who led the palace guards sank, and he said to a guard beside him in a deep voice, "Quickly inform the supervisor." The Blood Wolf King was not the only super expert in the Tao Master realm in the Blood Wolf Mansion. The supervisor in charge of the guards of the mansion was also a super expert in the Tao Master realm. The guard immediately turned around and left when he heard that. At the same time, the Tao King intended to act and suppress the prisoners as well. However, Zhang Qi suddenly erupted with rage before he could do so. She suddenly smashed her fist towards the Tao King with murderous intent. The Tao King realm expert had already noticed this person. Facing Zhang Qi's sudden attack, the Tao King realm expert's expression changed drastically. He felt a fatal aura from Zhang Qi, and he said with some surprise, "Tao? Tao Master, how could it be possible that Zhang Qi was a super expert of the Tao Master realm? How could a super expert of the Tao Master realm come back so quickly to break out of the prison?" He was shocked, but it was all over. Zhang Qi's punch landed heavily on the Tao King realm expert's chest, and the sound of bones cracking was heard, and his heart meridian was instantly shattered. She killed the Tao King realm expert in an instant. Then, Zhang Qi looked at the warriors of the heavenly Qin continent and said, "Quickly, let's go to the East Gate." Because of the prison break, the entire palace was in complete chaos. Countless guards rushed to the dungeon, and at the same time, Zhang Qi led the crowd to tear apart the guards of the Blood Wolf Palace, as if they were Jian-Yi, and they went straight to the East Gate. Along the way, Zhang Qi and the others fought their way out of the palace. As they rushed to the East Gate, Zhang Qi was secretly worried. "I wonder how young Master and Gu Xiu are now." Chapter 461. Zhang Qi had successfully led her group out of the estate. On the other side, Xiao Chen's group was even faster than Zhang Qi. It could be said that after rescuing his mother, Bai Ruyue, Xiao Chen and the others did not encounter much resistance and smoothly rushed out of the Blood Wolf Palace. This was all thanks to Zhang Qi and the others. It was precisely because Zhang Qi's group had caused such a great commotion in the dungeon that all the guards in the estate had rushed towards the dungeon. On the other hand, Xiao Chen's group seemed to have been forgotten. Xiao Chen naturally would not waste such a great opportunity. He allowed Bai Ruyue's group to rush out of the estate. Not long after Xiao Chen's group left, a middle-aged man in black robes appeared in Bai Ruyue's courtyard. He spoke with a gloomy expression as he looked at the corpses of the two Dao Validation Realm guards at the entrance. Damn it! The middle-aged man was the head guard of the mansion of Bloodwolf. He was a genuine super expert in the Tao Master realm. After hearing about the riot in the dungeon, The middle-aged man did not rush to the dungeon but came here instead. He knew very well how important Bai Ryue was to the Bloodwolf King. So, even though the dungeon was in chaos, Bai Ryue was clearly more important to him. However, he never expected that Bai Ryue would actually be rescued. The middle-aged man's eyes were overflowing with killing intent. He immediately shouted to the 2 Dao kings behind him, "Quickly notify the guards at the 4 city gates. Tell them that it's the king's orders. No one is allowed to enter or leave immediately." Yes. The 2 Dao kings nodded respectfully when they heard the middle-aged man's words. After that, they vanished on the spot. Since Bai Ryue had been rescued, it was even more reason to not allow these people to leave the city. As long as they were trapped in the imperial capital, the Bloodwolf King would naturally be able to find them with his ability. After instructing the 2 of them, the middle-aged man ordered someone to head to the Celestial Equal Sex encampment to inform the Bloodwolf King. As for himself, he personally rushed to the 4 city gate. As for the chaos in the underground prison, it was not worth mentioning in the eyes of the middle-aged man. The most important thing now was to find Bai Ryue. The Blood Wolf Mansion was in complete chaos, and Xiao Chun and the others were in a race against time. They had to escape from the imperial capital before the Blood Wolf King could react. Only then would they have a chance to return to the Moonless Empire. While Xiao Chun and the others were heading straight for the East Gate, the atmosphere at the Tianqi Sect's encampment was extremely lively because Gu Qi had personally hosted the banquet. Almost all the influential figures in the Tianqi Sect's imperial capital were present. As one of the 4 grand princes of the Heavenly Wolf Empire, the Bloodwolf King was naturally drinking to his heart's content at the banquet. There was a happy smile on his face. However, although he was smiling on the surface, the Bloodwolf King felt that something was wrong tonight, as if something big was about to happen. It was precisely because he felt that something was wrong that the Blood Wolf King actually wanted to leave. However, he didn't know why the 3rd elder of the Celestial Equal Sect had been pulling him to drink all night. As such, the Blood Wolf King couldn't leave early. The 3rd elder had been drinking with the Blood Wolf King. This was naturally Gu Qi's order. Although he did not know what Gu Qi meant, the 3rd elder had always obeyed Gu Qi's orders. Therefore, he did not have the slightest suspicion. The 3rd elder had been by the Bloodwolf King's side for the entire night. The more he drank, the more he felt that something was wrong. It had to be said that the Bloodwolf King was indeed a meticulous person. Coupled with the 3rd elder's abnormal behavior today, the Bloodwolf King was even more puzzled. Therefore, the Bloodwolf King used the alcohol to say to the 3rd elder, "Haha, 3rd elder, please wait for a moment. I'll go and have a drink with His Majesty. We'll continue later." Hearing the Bloodwolf King's words, the 3rd elder could not stop him and nodded his head slightly. After successfully asking the 3rd elder, the Bloodwolf King quickly blended into the crowd. He silently exited the hall and headed straight for the Bloodwolf Royal Mansion. He found an excuse to leave. Just as the Bloodwolf King walked out of the Tianqi Sect's encampment, a guard from the Bloodwolf Royal Mansion had just arrived. The 2 of them bumped into each other. When the guard saw the Bloodwolf King, he immediately told the Bloodwolf King about what happened in the mansion. After hearing about the prison riot and how Bai Ryue was taken away, the Bloodwolf King's face immediately sank. He quickly recalled the 3rd elder's abnormal behavior today. In an instant, the Bloodwolf King seemed to have thought of something. However, it was obviously impossible for him to directly question Gu Qi. The Bloodwolf King immediately said to the guard, "Quick, take my token and inform the guards at the 4 city gates. Don't let anyone out of the city." Gu Qi's banquet today had already made the Bloodwolf King feel strange. Now, he was even more certain that Gu Qi and Bai Ryue's rescue were definitely related. The Bloodwolf King immediately responded. Although he had already found out about this matter in the shortest amount of time, he also understood that it was probably too late to seal off the imperial city. After all the nobles and experts in the imperial city were currently drinking in the Tianqi sect's encampment. As a result, the defense of the 4 city gates was naturally lax. It was very likely that the thieves had already broken into the city. Realizing that it might be a step too late, the Bloodwolf King immediately took out a sound transmission talisman and sent out dozens of messages. These sound transmission talismans were sent to the city lords of the major cities around the imperial city. The orders on the talismans were very simple. All the city lords were to close the heavy teleportation array, and no one was to use it again. Realizing that Shao Chun and the rest had successfully escaped from the imperial city, the Bloodwolf King took a step back. Since the imperial city had been breached, he could not allow these thieves to leave the Heavenly Wolf Empire so easily. Without the teleportation array, it would not be easy for Shao Chun and the rest to rush to the border of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. They did not know that the Bloodwolf King had already made such strict arrangements in such a short period of time. In particular, he ordered the city lords to close the teleportation array. This was equivalent to cutting off Shao Chun and the rest's escape route. While the Bloodwolf King was making arrangements, the eastern gate of the imperial city was also under attack. Facing the attack of Shao Chun and the rest, the guards at the eastern gate could not hold on for long. They were quickly defeated, and Shao Chun and the rest successfully killed their way out of the eastern gate. After successfully escaping from the imperial city, Shao Chun and the rest quickly disappeared into the night. They had already planned their escape route. Not far from the imperial city, there was a city called Kingstown. There was a teleportation array there. Through the teleportation array, Shao Chun and the rest could directly reach the border of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 462. After successfully escaping from the imperial capital, Shao Chun and the others headed straight for Kingstown. After running for an entire night, they finally arrived at Kingstown. They silently entered the borders of Kingstown and did not stop. Shao Chun and the others headed straight for the teleportation matrix in the city. Before entering the city, Shao Chun's group had already changed into clean clothes, so it was impossible to tell that they had gone through an intense battle last night. However, Shao Chun did not expect that when they arrived at the teleportation formation in Kong City, Shao Chun discovered that it had been completely shut down. At the same time, over 100 light soldiers stood guard around it. A cold light flashed through Shao Chun's eyes. It was not good news that the teleportation formation in Kong City had been shut down at this time. After asking around, they found out that the teleportation formation in Kong City had suddenly shut down last night. No one was allowed to use it. As for why, the city lord's estate did not provide any explanation. Shao Chun frowned slightly. He had a rough idea of what had happened. He silently led the group away and found an inn first. After all, they were all very tired after a night of running and fighting. If they wanted to continue on their way, they needed to rest for a while. After settling by Ryua down, Shao Chun, Zhang Qi, and Gu Xiu sat together and looked at the 4 of them. Shao Chun said indifferently, "The Bloodwolf King probably already knows about this. It's probably not just the teleportation formation in Kong City that has been shut down. The teleportation formations in the other cities have probably been shut down as well. As a result, it's probably impossible to use the teleportation formation to get to Hulao Pass." Shao Chun quickly realized that the teleportation formation in Kong City had been shut down because of the Bloodwolf King. Moreover, if it really was the Bloodwolf King, he definitely would have cut off all their paths of retreat. As a result, it was impossible for him to shut down just the teleportation formation in Kong City. The expressions of Zhang Qi and the others changed slightly when they heard Shao Chun's words. Gu Xiu's expression was unsightly as he said, "If that's really the case, what should we do? Without a teleportation formation, it would take us at least half a month to reach Hulao Pass if we were to travel by foot. Moreover, if it is as you said, the Blood Wolf King is able to close all the teleportation formations to Hulao Pass. He will definitely strictly inspect us along the way. The Blood Wolf King's reaction was so fast that it was beyond everyone's expectations. Who would have thought that the Blood Wolf King would make such a deployment in just one night? Upon hearing Gu Xiu's words, Zhang Qi and the others all looked at Xiao Chen. Although they were all considered Xiao Chen's juniors, along the way, Zhang Qi and the others sincerely admired Xiao Chen's lack of temperament. For a young man who was not even 30 years old to have Xiao Chen's temperament, Zhang Qi and the others had never seen someone like him. Facing everyone's gazes, Xiao Chen softly muttered, "It seems that the Blood Wolf King wants to trap us in the Heavenly Wolf Empire until we die. He already knows that the Imperial capital can't trap us, so he might as well expand the range and trap us in the Heavenly Wolf Empire until we die." After speaking softly, Xiao Chen fell silent for a while before looking at Zhang Qi and the others. His eyes flashed with determination as he said, "There is no other way now. It is impossible to use the teleportation formation. Moreover, it is not suitable for us to stay in the city for long. I believe that it will not be long before the Blood Wolf King begins to wantonly search for our whereabouts. Therefore, we must leave Connecticut City and head towards Hulao Pass. Although the road will be filled with difficulties, there is no other choice now." It was impossible to rely on the teleportation formation now, and they could not even stay in the city for long. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Zhang Qi and the others present had a solemn expression, but there was no better way. Silently nodding their heads, Zhang Qi and the others also agreed with Xiao Chen's idea. After all, no matter how good the plan was, it still had to be changed according to the actual situation. Now that the Blood Wolf King had reacted quickly, Xiao Chen and the others had to make some changes to their plan. Seeing Zhang Qi and the others nod their heads, Xiao Chen said, "Okay, then there is no time to lose. Let's leave the city immediately." While Xiao Chen and the others were discussing the follow-up plan, in the imperial capital, the Blood Wolf King had summoned all his generals in his mansion. Unlike the 4 princes of the Moonless Empire, the 4 princes of the Celestial Wolf Empire had real military power in their hands. Therefore, the Blood Wolf King did not need the imperial family's permission to arrest Bai Ryue. Moreover, this was the Blood Wolf King's private matter, and the imperial family would not interfere. There were a total of 8 men sitting below the Blood Wolf King. 2 of them were at the Dao Master Realm, and 6 of them were at the Dao King Realm. These 8 people were the 8 most important ministers that the Blood Wolf King was most proud of. Glancing at the 8 people, the Blood Wolf King's expression was unusually calm, but there were 2 extremely strong killing intent shooting out from his eyes. He said in a cold voice, "Seal the borders of the country immediately, and at the same time, strictly check all the roads leading to the border. I have already sent a message to the imperial family and the other 3 princes to ask for their help. I don't care what method you use, but this time, you must capture Bai Ryue for me." Since he did not know Xiao Chen's identity, the Blood Wolf King naturally did not know that they would flee to Hulao Pass. He had arranged for all the roads leading to the border to be checked. At the same time, he had also asked the imperial family of the Celestial Wolf Empire and the other 3 princes to help. It had to be said that the Blood Wolf King had indeed put in a lot of effort for Bai Ryue, and he truly liked Bai Ryue. Since the first time he saw Bai Ryue, the Blood Wolf King was deeply attracted to her. He even did not hesitate to put Bai Ryue under house arrest in order to make her change her mind. However, to the Blood Wolf King, everything he did was because of his infatuation with Bai Ryue, but to Xiao Chen, everything the Blood Wolf King did deserved to die. He had already set up an inescapable net, vowing to intercept Xiao Chen and the others in the Celestial Wolf Empire and catch them like a turtle in a jar. As soon as the Blood Wolf King finished speaking, the 8 people below him stood up and bowed. The Blood Wolf King then waved his hand and the 8 people immediately left. Clearly they had lost their plan. After the 8 people left, the Blood Wolf King sat alone in the main hall. He had already guessed that this was related to the celestial equal sect. However, the Blood Wolf King was not stupid and naturally did not dare to question Guqi. Just as the Blood Wolf King was pondering, a white-haired steward of the king's mansion hurriedly walked in and respectfully said to the Blood Wolf King, "Your Highness, the young master of the Qingyang sect, Hua Zhe, has come to visit." "Hua Zhe? What is he doing here? Just say that I'm not here." Hearing that Hua Zhe had come to visit, the Blood Wolf King slightly exhorted. However, he was not in the mood to entertain Hua Zhe, so he simply refused to see him. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 463. He did not intend to nor did he have the time to greet Hua Zhe. However, after hearing the Blood Wolf King's words, the old butler said with a strange expression, "But he said he knows who rescued Madam." The old butler actually called by Ryua Madam. If Shao Chun was here, he would definitely be furious. The Blood Wolf King was clearly courting death. Hearing the old butler's words, a strange glint flashed across the Blood Wolf King's eyes. After a moment of silence, he said, "Bring him in." Originally, he did not intend to meet Hua Zhe. However, since Hua Zhe said that he knew who rescued by Ryua, the Blood Wolf King's interest was piqued. Soon, Hua Zhe came to the main hall and bowed to the Blood Wolf King. Seeing this, the Blood Wolf King also cupped his hands and said, "Young Master Hua, please take a seat." Hua Zhe was the young sect master of the Qingyang sect, so he had to be polite. Even though the Blood Wolf King was in a bad mood, he did not dare to neglect Hua Zhe. Hua Zhe calmly sat down next to the Blood Wolf King and went straight to the point. "Your Highness, this junior already knows who kidnapped Madam. Please tell me, young Master Hua. This king will definitely reward you handsomely." Hearing Hua Zhe's words, the Blood Wolf King also said with a serious face. Facing the Blood Wolf King's question, Hua Zhe said indifferently, "That person is Wang Huan from the Celestial Equal sect." The incident at the Blood Wolf Mansion was no longer a secret in the imperial capital. As the young sect master of the Qingyang sect, Hua Zhe naturally received the news. Moreover, through the second elder of the Celestial Equal sect, Hua Zhe quickly found out that Wang Huan had mysteriously disappeared. Last night, Guqi wantonly invited the influential figures of the imperial capital to a banquet. But at this time, such an incident happened at the Blood Wolf Mansion. Anyone with a discerning eye knew that this matter was definitely related to Guqi. However, due to the lack of evidence and the fact that Guqi was a sage-to-be expert, no one dared to say anything. Since this matter was related to Guqi and Shao Chen's sudden disappearance, it was naturally easy to understand the situation. Hua Zhe truthfully told the Blood Wolf King the news he received. Hearing Hua Zhe's words, a cold glint flashed across the Blood Wolf King's eyes. Wang Huan, after Hua Zhe's reminder, the Blood Wolf King quickly reacted. Previously, Wang Huan and Gu Lingyao had come to his place. During this period, Wang Huan had even left for a period of time. Now that he thought about it, Wang Huan must have come to scout ahead. It was almost certain that Wang Huan was the one behind this matter. Blood Wolf King already had a ranking in his heart. Hua Zhe smiled and said, "Your Highness is busy, so I won't disturb you any further." Since he had already said what he needed to say, Hua Zhe got up and bid farewell. Hearing this, the Blood Wolf King got up and thanked him. "Prince Hua, take care. I will definitely thank you later." "Your Highness is too polite." Hua Zhe smiled. Hua Zhe personally sent Hua Zhe out of the mansion and left the Blood Wolf King's place. Hua Zhe revealed a sneer. The reason why he told the Blood Wolf King this was entirely to take revenge on Shao Chun. It was understandable that Shao Chun had defeated him during the grand meeting between the two sections. However, Hua Zhe still held a grudge against Shao Chun because of this. Now that he knew about this, Hua Zhe did not hesitate to tell Blood Wolf King about it. "Wang Huan, let's see if you can survive this time." Hua Ze thought with a sneer on his face. Unaware of what happened in the imperial capital, Xiao Chen's group had already left Connecticut City. They didn't take the official road. Xiao Chen's group had been searching for unfrequented route. They had already guessed that the Blood Wolf King would set up roadblocks along the way. Taking the official road was equivalent to walking into a trap. They had been traveling for 3 days, but because they were walking, their speed wasn't very fast. There was still a long way to go before they arrived at Hulao Pass. If they wanted to hide their whereabouts, they naturally couldn't fly because they were too big of a target. There were more than 30 people. Because they were in a hurry, they had bought enough dragon horses. At this moment, the group was riding on the dragon horses as they traveled through a boundless wasteland. Along the way, Xiao Chen didn't dare to be careless. As they traveled, Xiao Chen asked Bai Ruiyue, "Mother, how is it? Do you want to rest for a while?" "Mother is fine." Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Bai Ruiyue shook her head and said, they had basically left the imperial capital of the Heavenly Wolf Empire, but they were still very far from the borders of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Worried that Bai Ruiyue wouldn't be able to endure such a long journey, Xiao Chen asked worriedly. Just as Bai Ruiyue's voice fell, a group of soldiers wearing black martial attire quickly flew over from behind. From afar, they saw Xiao Chen's group. The leader of the group was at the Dao Transformation Realm. They were really ordered to search for Bai Ruiyue's whereabouts. At this moment, seeing Xiao Chen's group from afar, the leader frowned and said, "Go down and ask." In just 3 days, the entire Heavenly Wolf Empire was filled with wanted posters for Bai Ruiyue, Xiao Chen, and the others. Of course, the Blood Wolf King didn't know Xiao Chen's true identity and appearance, so he posted Wang Huan's identity on the wanted posters. The entire army of the Heavenly Wolf Empire was searching for Xiao Chen's group, and this group of soldiers was doing the same. At the same time, Xiao Chen's group naturally noticed the presence of this group of soldiers. In an instant, Zhang Qi looked at Xiao Chen and said, "Young master, let's take a look first. If it doesn't work, we'll kill them all." Knowing what Zhang Qi meant, Xiao Chen gestured for everyone not to panic. He wanted to observe the situation first. Just as Xiao Chen's voice fell, the group of more than 100 soldiers blocked the path of Xiao Chen's group. The leader shouted coldly, "Who are you? Where are you going?" "Sir, we are from Connecticut City, and we are heading to Poo City," Xiao Chen replied after hearing the leader's words. Heading to Poo City from Connecticut City. Hearing this, the leader's gaze swept across Xiao Chen's group. When he saw the 23 Heavenly Chen continent warriors who were imprisoned in the Blood Wolf Mansion, his expression changed abruptly. The Blood Wolf King had already distributed the portraits of these people to the many soldiers of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Therefore, when the general saw these people, he quickly knew the identity of these people. They were the prisoners who had escaped from the Blood Wolf Mansion. His face suddenly changed, but Zhang Qi was one step ahead of him, and she suddenly burst into action. Previously, when the leader's expression changed, Xiao Chen instantly guessed that he had seen through their identities. Immediately, he signaled Zhang Qi with his eyes. Seeing this, Zhang Qi naturally didn't hesitate and immediately chose to take action. "Damn it, they are those bastards. Take them down." Zhang Qi exploded, and the leading general immediately shouted angrily, "Please collect, vote, recommend." Chapter 464. He did not expect to meet Xiao Chen and the others here. The plain they were on was called the Sirius Plains, which was the hinterland of the Sirius Empire. With the general's angry roar, more than 100 soldiers of the Sirius Empire attacked Xiao Chen and the others. He did not know the strength of Xiao Chen and the others, but he knew that Zhang Qi had killed more than a dozen soldiers in an instant with just one palm strike. Seeing this scene, the general's face suddenly changed, and he said in disbelief, "Strong cultivators of the Tao Master Realm." Seeing that Zhang Qi was a Tao sovereign expert, the general's heart sank. Zhang Qi alone was not someone they could deal with. Without hesitation, the general immediately took out a transportation glyph and activated it. Seeing that the general used the transportation glyph, Xiao Chen coldly shouted to Gu Xiu, "Stop him, don't let him escape." He knew very well that if their whereabouts were exposed, it would be too difficult for them to escape. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Gu Xiu immediately attacked with a fierce punch. However, he was still a step too late. Although Gu Xiu's punch successfully hit the general, he still managed to escape with the transportation glyph. After the general escaped, the remaining soldiers were quickly killed by Zhang Qi and the others. However, Xiao Chen was not happy at all. The general had escaped, so it would not be long before the Blood Wolf King found out about their whereabouts. "We can't stay here any longer. We must rush out of the Sirius Plains as soon as possible." With a serious expression, Xiao Chen said faintly. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, the others nodded. Then, Xiao Chen made a prompt decision. He ordered everyone to abandon their dragon horses and fly out of the Sirius Plains as soon as possible. All this while, the reason why everyone did not fly in the air was because they wanted to hide their tracks. However, that general had already fled. In this way, everyone's tracks were naturally exposed. There was no point in continuing to hide. Carrying their mother, Bai Ruyue, on their backs, the group soared into the sky and quickly flew out of the Sirius Plains. While Xiao Chen and the others were hurrying on their way, the general, who had just escaped death, immediately reported the situation to the Blood Wolf King. An hour later, the Blood Wolf King, who was in the imperial capital, received the news and said with a murderous look in his eyes, "You ran to the Celestial Wolf Plains? Humph! Do you think you can escape the Celestial Wolf Empire?" Immediately, the Blood Wolf King mobilized the army around the Sirius Plateau and surrounded it. At the same time, the Blood Wolf King personally set off for the Sirius Plateau. Now that he knew the whereabouts of Xiao Chen and the others, the Blood Wolf King naturally wouldn't let Xiao Chen and the others escape. He sealed off the entire Sirius Plains and then caught them like turtles in a jar. Following the Blood Wolf King's order, the army stationed around the Sirius Plateau was mobilized. A total of 400,000 people quickly blocked off the periphery of the Sirius Plateau. At the same time, according to the Blood Wolf King's order, the hundreds of thousands of soldiers continued to shrink the encirclement. They wanted to completely trap Xiao Chen and the others in the Sirius Plateau. While the Blood Wolf King was taking action, Gu Lingyao and Gu Qi, who were in the imperial capital, looked at their father. Gu Lingyao asked worriedly, "Father, do you think he can escape?" "I don't know, but we can't do anything anymore. The Qingyang sect has not left the Sirius Empire until now. They are obviously watching us. They could no longer help Xiao Chen. Logically speaking, the Qingyang sect should have left the Sirius Empire after the two sects' grand meeting ended. However, the Qingyang sect had not left until now. It was obvious that they were waiting for the Tianqi sect. There was no doubt that if Gu Qi helped Xiao Chen again, the Qingyang sect would definitely take the opportunity to make things difficult for him. If it were any other time, Gu Qi could still go all out. However, he couldn't do so now because the Tianqi sect had a huge internal problem. The most important thing now was to eliminate the first elder and second elder. Hearing Gu Qi's words, Gu Lingyao also knew about this. He could only sigh helplessly. Gu Qi had already done what he had to do. The rest was up to Xiao Chen. With a calm expression, Gu Qi finally said indifferently, "Get ready to leave the Sirius Empire tomorrow. It's time to settle the first elder and second elder's matter." Gu Lingyao was ready to leave the Sirius Empire and return to the Tianqi sect. Hearing Gu Qi's words, he nodded and got up to leave. It was impossible for the Tianqi sect to help Xiao Chen anymore. The next morning, Gu Qi really left the Sirius Empire with the Tianqi sect and returned to the Tianqi sect. As Gu Qi and the others left, the sect master of the Qingyang sect and Hua Zhe sat opposite each other in the garden of the Qingyang sect's encampment. Looking at Hua Zhe, the sect master of the Qingyang sect asked softly, Gu Qi has already left. I knew that old fox wouldn't give us a chance. Father should have thought of this long ago. After all, this is the Heavenly Wolf Empire. If Gu Qi disregards everything, Father can join forces with the Heavenly Wolf Empire and completely kill Gu Qi. How could Gu Qi not have thought of this? Hua Zhe softly replied after hearing his father's words. Forget it. Since Gu Qi has left, we should also leave, said the sect master of the Qingyang sect. Since Gu Qi didn't give them a chance, there was no point for the Qingyang sect to stay in the Sirius Empire any longer. The Qingyang sect also left soon after the Tianqi sect left. The two sects left one after another, but the operation to capture Shao Chen was still ongoing. After 3 days, Shao Chen and the others were completely trapped in the Sirius Plains. They had fought several fierce battles along the way, and the number of troops from the Sirius Empire was increasing. At this moment, Shao Chen and the others, who had just experienced a fierce battle, found a secluded place to rest for a while. Everyone sat together in a circle. Shao Chen said to Zhang Qi, Gu Xiu, and the others with a solemn expression, "It seems that the entire Sirius Plains has been sealed off by the Sirius Empire's army." After experiencing several fierce battles in the past 3 days, Shao Chen was certain that the entire Sirius Plains had been sealed off. It could be said that Shao Chen and the others were now surrounded by the Sirius Empire's army. If they wanted to escape, they could only tear a hole in the encirclement of the Sirius Empire's army. However, this would inevitably lead to another battle, but there was no other way. Moreover, the longer the battle dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for Shao Chen and the others. This was because the Sirius Empire's army was constantly shrinking the encirclement. As a result, it would only become more and more difficult to break out. There was only one way to break out. However, even if they wanted to break out, they had to choose a direction. Gu Xiu took out the map of the Sirius Empire, which Shao Chen had prepared earlier. After looking at the map for a while, Shao Chen finally pointed to a point on the map and said in a deep voice, "We'll break out from here. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 465. Shao Chen pointed at a spot on the map. Everyone looked in the direction that Shao Chen pointed. They saw that the place he chose to break out was the west side of the Sirius Plains. Gu Xiu revealed a puzzled expression. He asked doubtfully about Shao Chen's decision. "Young master, if we break out from here, wouldn't we be going in the opposite direction of Hulao Pass?" The place Shao Chen chose to break out was in the opposite direction of Hulao Pass. Gu Xiu did not understand. If that was the case, would they still go to Hulao Pass? In response to Gu Xiu's question, Shao Chen explained, "Now that the entire Sirius Plains is surrounded, the Blood Wolf King will definitely think that we are preparing to leave the Sirius Empire. As such, the blockade leading to Hulao Pass will naturally be the tightest. Not to mention whether we can succeed in breaking out from there. Even if we succeed, there will be many casualties. As such, we will go in the opposite direction and break out from the west. Although we will have to take a long detour, look, after we break out of the Sirius Plains from the west, we can enter Mount Mang. As long as we can enter Mount Mang, we will have enough space to deal with the Blood Wolf King. At the same time, Mount Mang leads directly to Hulao Pass. We can pass through Mount Mang directly and rush to Hulao Pass. Although it will be much safer, it will be safer," Shao Chen explained patiently. Hearing this, Gu Xiu and the others were enlightened. At the same time, they could not help but admire Shao Chen even more. Shao Chen might be the youngest among them, and his cultivation was only at the small perfection Dao querying realm. However, along the way, Shao Chen's various decisions could be said to be extremely correct. Zhang Qi, Gu Xiu, and the other experts of the older generation, who had lived for more than 100 years, could not help but admire him. At the very least, they would not be able to do what Shao Chen did under the same circumstances. No one had any objections to Shao Chen's decision. After that, Shao Chen discussed the details with everyone. Sitting not far away, Bai Rui's eyes were filled with pride as she watched Shao Chen discuss with the others. The true dragon of the Shao family, a teenager, had unknowingly grown to such a level. In the face of the older generation experts of the heavenly Qin continent, Shao Chen was neither servile nor overbearing. At the same time, in the past few days of fleeing, Bai Rui could clearly feel that Zhang Qi and the others truly admired Shao Chen from the bottom of their hearts. They were also willing to listen to Shao Chen's orders. From a young and inexperienced youth, Shao Chen had grown to become the center of attention. Weren't the dozens of heavenly Chen continent warriors in front of him the same? With Shao Chen as the center, they surrounded Shao Chen and were willing to listen to any orders from Shao Chen. Suddenly, Bai Rui really felt that Shao Chen had grown up. He was no longer the talented youth of the past. After a round of discussion, they finally finalized all the details. In the end, Shao Chen stood up and looked around at everyone present. He said in a deep voice, "For this breakout, everyone must not be overly zealous. I hope that everyone present will be able to leave the Heavenly Wolf Empire safely. I, Shao Chen, do not wish to see any of my compatriots fall." Even if it was a breakout, Shao Chen did not wish to see any of the Heavenly Chen continent's warriors fall. Hearing Shao Chen's words, everyone nodded heavily. Now that they had a plan, Shao Chen and the others turned around and headed straight for the west side of the Heavenly Wolf Plains. They were already at the edge of the Heavenly Wolf Plains, so it did not take long for them to reach the west side of the Heavenly Wolf Plains. One day later, Shao Chen and the others arrived at the breakout point. They hid behind a huge rock far away. More than 10 miles away from Shao Chen and the others was the Heavenly Wolf Empire's army's encampment. As long as they rushed over, they would be able to enter Mount Mang. Shao Chen sent Gu Xiu to investigate. 2 hours later, Gu Xiu returned. "Young master, there are about 10,000 Heavenly Wolf Empire's soldiers stationed in front of us." Gu Xiu told Shao Chen the detailed information he had obtained. Hearing Gu Xiu's words, Shao Chen nodded slightly. He patted Gu Xiu's shoulder and said, "You've worked hard. Go and rest first." After letting Gu Xiu take the time to rest, Shao Chen fell into deep thought. 10,000 Heavenly Wolf Empire soldiers was not a lot. It could even be said that it was a small number. However, the most important problem was that once Shao Chen and the others broke out, they had to tear apart the army's defensive line in a short time. Otherwise, the other troops of the Heavenly Wolf Empire would arrive to support them. They did not want to defeat the army, but to tear apart their defensive line. In the end, Shao Chen decided to attack at night. Under the cover of the night, the people of the Heavenly Chen continent suddenly launched an attack. All of their forces were concentrated at one point. They wanted to tear apart the army's defensive line as quickly as possible and then enter Mount Mang. Shao Chen patiently lurked in the same spot and waited until nightfall before he gathered everyone. According to Shao Chen's plan, Zhang Qi would be the leader of this breakout. After all, Zhang Qi was a super expert of the Dao Master Realm. She would be the first to attack with her battle qi. As for the others, they would follow Zhang Qi according to their cultivation level. They would rush straight into the enemy and tear open a path as quickly as possible. There was only one requirement for everyone. There were a total of 36 people present. In this battle, Shao Chen wanted everyone to be like a dagger. They were only missing the enemy's heart. They would completely tear apart the enemy's defensive line. Zhang Qi was the sharpest point of this dagger. After explaining the whole plan to everyone, Shao Chen asked Zhang Qi to stay. He bowed respectfully to Zhang Qi and said sincerely, "Shao Chen thanks Senior." Zhang Qi had never complained about him coming to rescue Bai Rui. As a super expert of the Dao Master Realm, Zhang Qi was obedient to him. Therefore, Shao Chen was sincerely grateful to Zhang Qi. In response to Shao Chen's gratitude, Zhang Qi smiled and said, "You don't have to thank me, young master. The Heavenly Chen continent has undergone a great change, and we have to leave our homeland. I have already thought about it. People like you are the hope of the heavenly Chen continent. I am willing to be at your beck and call." Zhang Qi was completely convinced by Xiao Chen and was moved. Xiao Chen bowed to Zhang Qi again. Then, everyone quietly moved toward the army of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Xiao Chen did not want to alert the enemy. He wanted to launch a surprise attack when the enemy was unprepared. Only in this way could he catch them off guard and tear open a path as soon as possible. Xiao Chen quietly arrived in front of the Heavenly Wolf Empire's military camp. Seeing that the military camp had already appeared in their line of sight, everyone tried their best to conceal their presence. Finally, when they were less than 1,000 meters away from the camp, Xiao Chen suddenly shouted in a clear voice, "Kill!" Following Xiao Chen's angry roar, with Zhang Qi in the lead and Gu Xiu and the other two Dao Kings as support, everyone hesitated for a moment before they charged toward the army of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 466. The sudden battle cry stunned the Heavenly Wolf Empire's army. In the commander's tent at the center of the camp, the general of the army stood up abruptly and shouted, "What's going on? Where did the battle cry come from?" The general, who was cultivating, was awakened by the sudden battle cry. Following his shout, a soldier quickly ran into the tent and reported respectfully, "General, it's the prisoners. They're attacking." "What? They dare to attack our camp?" The general's expression changed drastically when he heard that. Without any warning, Zhang Qi was the first to rush into the camp at the same time as the battle cry rang out. Her Dao Sovereign Realm aura soared into the sky. Behind her were Gu Xiu and the other Dao King Realm experts, as well as other Heavenly Chen continent cultivators. As for Xiao Chen, he carried Bai Ruiyue on his back and rushed into the enemy's camp with the others. It was impossible for Bai Ruiyue to fight. Xiao Chen was well aware of Bai Ruiyue's combat strength. Although Bai Ruiyue was at the Heaven Realm, in a battle of life and death, Bai Ruiyue was probably inferior to an Earth Mirror cultivator. "Mother, hold on tight," Xiao Chen said to Bai Ruiyue, who was on his back with the scarlet edge sword in hand. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Bai Ruiyue hugged Xiao Chen tightly. At the same time, the battle had already begun. According to Xiao Chen's request, the group did not continue to fight. They only charged forward, trying to break through the enemy's camp. Soon, the group killed their way into the enemy's mansion. They were surrounded by densely packed soldiers of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. At this time, the general who was in the commander's tent strode out and shouted coldly at Xiao Chen and the others. "Taking them down will be a great achievement. Kill them!" With the general's command, the soldiers of the Heavenly Wolf Empire gathered their strength and charged madly at Xiao Chen and the others. Although the cultivations of these soldiers were generally not high, with most of them being at the Earth Clear Mirror Realm, there were many of them. In addition, Xiao Chen and the others did not have much time to tangle with them, so the battle became particularly intense. Hearing the general's angry roar, Zhang Qi, who was in the lead, immediately rushed towards the general, intending to kill him first. Everyone knew that to catch bandits, one had to catch the ringleader first. With Zhang Qi's attack, the general's hair stood on end. A super expert in the Tao Master Realm was no joke. She was at the same level as Blood Wolf King. With a leap, Zhang Qi arrived in front of the general and slashed out with her sword without holding back. The general wanted to resist Zhang Qi's attack, but unfortunately, he was only at the Dao Transformation Realm, so he was naturally no match for Zhang Qi. Zhang Qi killed the general with just one move. Now that the general was dead, the remaining soldiers were naturally in chaos. Xiao Chen and the others also seized this opportunity to charge forward frantically. While carrying his mother, Zhang Jingxiang, on his back, he charged forward with the scarlet-edged sword in his hand. It could be said that he killed 10 people with a single step. Blood stained Xiao Chen's clothes. Soldiers constantly rushed towards Xiao Chen, but what greeted them was the 7-foot-long azure sword in Xiao Chen's hand. Bai Ruiyue's expression was firm, without any hesitation. Lying on Xiao Chen's back and watching Xiao Chen kill the enemies along the way, Bai Ruiyue did not know why, but a thick mist gradually condensed in her eyes. Xiao Chen had really grown up. However, as he grew up, Bai Ruiyue also knew that Xiao Chen must have experienced a lot of hardships along the way. Lying on Xiao Chen's back, Bai Ruiyue only felt incomparably safe. Even though the two of them were surrounded by soldiers of the Heavenly Wolf Empire, Bai Ruiyue had nothing to be afraid of as long as Xiao Chen was there. Along the way, Xiao Chen and the others quickly broke through the army's defensive line. Seeing this, Xiao Chen shouted without hesitation, "Let's go!" There was no time to stop. They had to enter Mount Mang as soon as possible. Only then would they be able to contend with the hundreds of thousands of soldiers of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Hearing Xiao Chen's shout, the group charged forward and quickly disappeared into the night. Xiao Chen and the others had successfully broken through the Heavenly Wolf Empire's defensive line. This news was immediately transmitted to the Blood Wolf King through the sound transmission talisman. In order to capture Xiao Chen, the Blood Wolf King personally came to the front line. Hearing that Xiao Chen and the others had broken through from the west side of the Heavenly Wolf Plains, the Blood Wolf King's face immediately sank. He quickly walked to the map in the tent and stared at the place where Xiao Chen and the others had broken through. This was indeed the weakest point of the entire encirclement. However, this place was in the opposite direction of Hulao Pass. Xiao Chen and the others had broken through from here. Just what? In the beginning, the Blood Wolf King did not realize the intentions of Xiao Chen and the others. However, when he saw the Mang Mountain in the west side of the Heavenly Wolf Plains, he immediately reacted. His eyes seemed to spit fire as he gritted his teeth and said, Mang Mountain, Mang Mountain. This Mang Mountain is connected to Hulao Pass. These thieves want to enter Mang Mountain. Seeing Mang Mountain, the Blood Wolf King quickly realized Xiao Chen's intentions. After all, he was a veteran general who had fought for most of his life. Naturally, he quickly saw through the clues. Mang Mountain stretched for tens of thousands of miles. It could be said that it spanned across the entire territory of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. Moreover, Mang Mountain was covered with tall mountains and winding paths. Once they entered Mang Mountain, Xiao Chen and the others could easily hide. On the other hand, the army of the Heavenly Wolf Empire would not be able to enter Mang Mountain, let alone march through Mang Mountain. Compared to the Heavenly Wolf Plains, it was much more difficult to find Xiao Chen and the others in Mang Mountain. With a bang, the Blood Wolf King fiercely slammed the wooden table in front of him. In an instant, the wooden table shattered. His eyes were overflowing with killing intent as he shouted, "What cunning thieves! However, do you think you can escape from this king's palm? Even if you enter Mang Mountain, this king will definitely find you one by one." His heart was filled with anger. After he finished speaking, the Blood Wolf King angrily shouted outside the tent, "Go and invite Lang Qing to this king." Yes. Hearing the Blood Wolf King's shout, a soldier respectfully responded. After his rage, the Blood Wolf King gradually calmed down. Since Xiao Chen and the others had already entered Mang Mountain, sending an army to surround and capture them was obviously not feasible. After all, an army of hundreds of thousands and dozens of people were two completely different concepts. In the continuous Mang Mountain, Xiao Chen and the others were like fish in water. However, for hundreds of thousands of soldiers of the Heavenly Wolf Empire, the continuous Mang Mountain was an insurmountable obstacle. It was impossible for hundreds of thousands of soldiers to advance through Mang Mountain. Therefore, the Blood Wolf King had to change his strategy. In the face of Mang Mountain's obstruction, hundreds of thousands of soldiers were no longer of any use. As such, he could only use the Heavenly Wolf Guards. Fortunately, the Blood Wolf King had a backup plan. He deliberately borrowed the Heavenly Wolf Guards from His Majesty, just in case. Please collect, please vote, please recommend. Chapter 467. The Blood Wolf King was glad that he had a backup plan, the Sky Wolf Guards. The Celestial Wolf Guard was extremely famous in the Celestial Wolf Empire because they were the personal guards of the Emperor of the Celestial Wolf Empire. Even though there weren't many of them, only a total of 1,000, every single one of them could be said to be an elite amongst elites. It could be said that the Heavenly Wolf Guard was the most elite force in the Heavenly Wolf Empire. No, in order to enter the Heavenly Wolf Guard, one's cultivation had to be at least at the Tao Transformation Realm. Think about it, a Tao Transformation Realm warrior could be a general in other armies, but this was only the standard to enter the Heavenly Wolf Guard. It was precisely because the requirements for the Celestial Wolf Guards were very high that there were not many of them. At the same time, the only person in the entire Celestial Wolf Empire who could mobilize the Celestial Wolf Guards was the Emperor of the Celestial Wolf Empire. They only listened to the Emperor of the Celestial Wolf Empire. Sitting in the commander's tent, a middle-aged man wearing a black martial attire with a wolf head embroidered on the chest of his attire strode into the tent. The middle-aged man cupped his hands and bowed to the Blood Wolf King. "Greetings, Your Highness." This man was Lang Qing, one of the 3 deputy commanders of the Sky Wolf Guards. In order to capture Shao Chun and the others, the Blood Wolf King had borrowed 300 Sky Wolf Guards from the Emperor. Lang Qing was the leader of the 300 Sky Wolf Guards. The entire Celestial Wolf Guard had a commander and 3 vice-commanders. The commander was a Tao sovereign, while the 3 vice-commanders were Tao King experts. Facing the Blood Wolf King, Lang Qing didn't show too much respect. Thinking about it, as the vice-commander of the Skywolf Guard, if it wasn't for His Majesty's order, Lang Qing wouldn't even bother with the Blood Wolf King, even if he was one of the 4 Grand Princes. It was not because of Lang Qing's indifference. The Blood Wolf King knew about the Blood Wolf King's group. He looked at Lang Qing with killing intent and went straight to the point. "I just received news that the thieves have broken through the encirclement from the west. I'm afraid that they have already entered Mount Mang. It's difficult for the army to mobilize in Mount Mang, so I can only ask you to take action." The Blood Wolf King was straightforward and directly stated the purpose of summoning Lang Qing. Hearing this, Lang Qing nodded slightly and said in an extremely cold voice, "As per your orders, the Blood Wolf King will move out immediately." Without waiting for the Blood Wolf King's reply, Lang Qing turned around and was about to leave. However, the Blood Wolf King called out first, "Commander Lang Qing, you must not hurt the madam." The madam that the Blood Wolf King was referring to was naturally Bai Ryu. Upon hearing these words, Lang Qing's footsteps paused. With his back facing the Blood Wolf King, he nodded slightly and strode out of the commander's tent. Seeing Lang Qing leave, the killing intent in the Blood Wolf King's eyes did not lessen. He had already decided that he would personally enter the Mang Mountain. This time, the bandits had kidnapped Bai Ryu. The Blood Wolf King could only personally grind the bones of these bandits into dust to vent the hatred in his heart. Just as the Blood Wolf King made his decision, Lang Qing quickly gathered the Heavenly Wolf Guards after leaving the Blood Wolf King's residence. The 300 Heavenly Wolf Guards were all wearing black martial attire with a terrifying wolf head embroidered on the chest. Every one of their faces was expressionless. There was no joy or sadness on their faces. There was only a deep indifference towards life. Just 300 people standing together, but the aura they emitted had already surpassed that of 1,000 soldiers. This was the Heavenly Wolf Empire's most elite army, the Heavenly Wolf Guards. Someone once said that to surround and annihilate 1,000 Heavenly Wolf Guards, one would need at least 1,000,000 soldiers. One could imagine how terrifying the battle strength of 1,000 Heavenly Wolf Guards was. They were the sharpest blade in the hands of the Emperor of the Heavenly Wolf Empire. "Let's go to the Mang Mountain." Looking at the 300 Heavenly Wolf Guards, Lang Qing indifferently said. Hearing this, the 300 Heavenly Wolf Guards simultaneously soared into the sky. Their figures instantly disappeared into the night as they rushed towards the Mang Mountain. Their actions were swift and decisive. Just as the 300 Heavenly Wolf Guards were dispatched, Xiao Chen and the rest had also successfully entered the Mang Mountain. At this point, everyone secretly breathed a sigh of relief. As long as they entered the Mang Mountain, the hundreds of thousands of soldiers of the Heavenly Wolf Empire would not be of much use. Slowing down, everyone successively swallowed healing elixirs. Due to the lack of time, everyone had naturally fought crazily. Now that they were able to relax, many of them were injured. Fortunately, no one had died. Following the predetermined route, they walked towards the depths of the Mang Mountain. At this point, Xiao Chen's heart gradually relaxed. After traveling for an entire night, the next morning, everyone stopped by a small stream to rest. Sitting side by side with Bai Ruiyue, they looked at Xiao Chen, whose face was covered in blood. Bai Ruiyue's movements were gentle as she wiped the blood off his face. "Young master, now that we have entered the Mang Mountain, I believe that the Heavenly Wolf Empire's army will no longer be able to pursue us." Taking large strides towards Xiao Chen, Gu Xiu secretly relaxed and said. Hearing Gu Xiu's words, Xiao Chen said with a grave expression, "We still cannot be careless. Although it is difficult for the army to force their way through the Mang Mountain, the strength of the Heavenly Wolf Empire cannot be underestimated." Before successfully leaving the Heavenly Wolf Empire's territory, Xiao Chen did not dare to be careless. Moreover, he did not know how to put it. In any case, there was an indescribable feeling in Xiao Chen's heart. This feeling was very uncomfortable. After resting for about an hour, everyone continued on their journey. They had to pass through the Mang Mountain to reach the Hulao Pass. The distance was almost doubled. However, there was no other way. If they wanted to reach the Hulao Pass, this was the only way. Along the way, just as Xiao Chen and the rest continued on their journey, the 300 Heavenly Wolf Guards led by Lang Qing also arrived at the camp where Xiao Chen and the rest had broken through last night. Seeing the arrival of the Heavenly Wolf Guards, the soldiers all revealed fear. However, Lang Qing said indifferently, "How did the thieves enter the Mang Mountain?" Under the lead of the soldiers, Lang Qing arrived at the place where Xiao Chen and the rest had entered the Mang Mountain. After looking around, Lang Qing led the 300 Heavenly Wolf Guards into the Mang Mountain. The 300 Heavenly Wolf Guards could not be mentioned in the same breath as an ordinary army. They had all undergone extremely strict training. Not only were their battle prowess great, but their tracking abilities were also first-rate. Along the way, Lang Qing led them deeper and deeper into the Mang Mountain, following the tracks left behind by Xiao Chen and the rest. Half a day later, Lang Qing arrived by the stream where Xiao Chen and the rest had rested. "The thieves have rested here. From the looks of it, it has been less than a day since they left. Hurry up and catch up to them." After observing by the stream, Lang Qing very quickly confirmed that Xiao Chen and the rest had left less than a day ago. As a result, he immediately gave the order to pursue. The 300 Heavenly Wolf Guards only nodded silently when they heard this. Afterwards, they quickly followed the tracks left behind by Xiao Chen and the rest. Begging for a monthly vote, begging for a recommendation. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.